Chapter 327. The ninjas of the 5 major countries are disgusted with the Akatsuki. If it wasn't for the emergence of this mysterious organization, the balance between the 5 major countries wouldn't be broken. One day, the 5 major countries are closely related to each other, and when the balance is broken, it means war. Therefore, even if there are many contradictions, there won't be a violent conflict because once it happens it means war. War is not a game, and there is no absolute winner. It's funny. As if he heard the most ridiculous joke in the world, Anoki's face was full of disdain, showing a contemptuous smile, and sarcastically said, "A dark organization composed entirely of S-class ninjas is talking about peace." Not only Anoki's face was full of sneer, but the other Kage also showed a strange look. "First of all, let me introduce myself." Ignoring the disdainful look of the Kage, the masked man said something amazing. "My name is Uchiha Madara." As the words fell, the masked man's mask began to twist, and the dark pupil turned into a deep 3-tomo. The evil eye power was extremely powerful, and with just a casual glance, you will be addicted to it and can't extricate yourself. With the huge momentum of the whole body, he indeed has the appearance of Uchiha Madara. The acting is realistic enough, but the aura is not enough. Removing the Kensusunu, Dustless gave the masked man a thumbs up. If his aura is strong enough, no one will be able to recognize that he is a copy of Uchiha Madara. However, Uchiha Madara is not a character that can be easily imitated. Obito is not as strong as Uchiha Madara. Naturally, he does not have the confidence of Uchiha Madara. So in the eyes of Dustless, he is full of flaws. Dust release, boundary stripping technique. Anoki was so angry that he directly hit the masked man with dust release, making him unable to move, and said with a cold smile, "Uchiha Madara? This old man once had the honor to see his face. Maybe your eye power is very strong, but you are still too far away from his spirit of treating all living beings as grass. If you want to surpass him, go home and hone yourself for 10 years. Without the slightest mercy, Anoki's old mouth was as sharp as a knife at the moment, viciously belittling the masked man. "That's all I have to say. It's up to you to believe me or not." Hearing this, the masked man only responded with indifference. His heart seemed to have been frozen, without any human emotions. Boom boom boom. The white enchantment that condensed the body of Obito shattered with a bang, raising smoke and dust several feet high. The surroundings suffered the purest destruction, and the appearance was completely changed. Anoki's face was full of hope, hoping to get rid of this guy who pretended to be Uchiha Madara. To put it bluntly, the reason why Anoki was so eager to get rid of this Uchiha Madara in front of him was because he wanted to cut off the nightmare. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. A moment later, a strong chakra wave came out from the sand and dust that filled the sky. The wanton smoke was suppressed, revealing the masked man who was intact. Seeing this, the corners of Anoki's mouth twitched without leaving a trace. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood, including the masked man in front of him. There were already 2 people who had been hit by the dust release head-on. Casually glancing at Anoki, the masked man's eyes fell on Wuchun, and a strange color flashed through his eyes. The previous fierce masked man of Kensusunu was in his eyes. Only by obtaining the eye power beyond Mangekyo Sharingan can one open the legendary complete Kensusunu. Mangekyo alone can't open the complete Kensusunu. Kakashi is a Byuji. Sasuke and Itachi's eyes are intact. This guy is. The scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan flashed with confusion. After a while, he no longer entangled with it. There are too many unsolved mysteries in the world. There is no need to care about a small pawn. Continue the previous topic. His eyes fell on the 5 Kage again. The masked man's body was full of rapid oppression, coupled with his unfathomable strength. No one could ignore him. Therefore, he snatched Dustless's script. The eyes of the 5 Kage were all focused on him. Pretending to be a ghost. Wuchun curled his lips when he saw this. His face was full of disdain. Obito, this kid, was really good at acting. He inverted right and wrong. It was easy for him to say that the red was white. As long as you hand over Nibi's Jinchuriki, everything will be over, and there will be no war. The masked man's eyes fell on Reikage. His tone was cold, but he was very serious. Obviously, he was not joking. He said solemnly, "I will bring the whole world into the world of dreams. Human souls will be sublimated." Hearing this, the fourth Reikage just sneered again and again. He ignored the previous remarks of the masked man and asked directly, "What if I don't hand over Yujito?" The surging murderous aura gathered, and Reikage's murderous aura was revealed. Handing over his companions in exchange for peace, such a crazy thing. He knew he couldn't do it. In particular, the ambitious Akatsuki organization's purpose was obviously to plot against the whole world. Even if he really handed over Nibi's Jinchuriki to the masked man, he wouldn't let the world go. Don't agree. This is very simple. The three Tomo Sharingan reflected an evil light, and the masked man sneered. There is only one consequence of this. That is war. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere turned grave and stern for a while before it suddenly exploded. It was like a giant rock falling into the calm water, splashing huge ripples. Not only the five Kage were stunned by the masked man, but even Dustless was also stunned for a short time. What is Obito's idea? Now the White Zetsu army should not be completed yet. Where did this guy get the confidence to do such a thing? Dustless frowned deeply, trying to spy on the masked man, but found that at this moment, Obito was covered with a mysterious veil, and he couldn't see through it. Compared with the previous Obito, who could be freely played with, the masked man in front of him, Dustless also felt a sense of danger. Chapter 328. The number of the ninja allied forces wasn't something to be underestimated. They were as many as the hairs on a cow, and their combat power was extremely strong. At least, they could easily defeat 100,000 White Zetsu with tens of thousands of people. The more confident you are, the harder you fall. Anoki mocked the masked man's arrogant words and said contemptuously, "Since you want to fight, then the Rock Village will accompany you to the end." Anoki's murderous aura was awe-inspiring, and his tone was resolute. Unlike others, he had experienced 3 shinobi world wars, and he had already honed his will. It was unrealistic to use the word war to defeat his will. The so-called peace was won by fighting, not by begging. As the Tsuchikage-sama said, "No matter who you are, no matter what kind of conspiracy you have, we will fight to the death. Even if we have to fight to the last soldier, we won't give the world to a madman like you." Taking a step forward, Mei made the final decision. Obviously, she wanted the entire Mist Village to be the first front line against the Akatsuki. Women are not inferior to men. Yondaime Reikage nodded with satisfaction and said with a sincere tone. This male chauvinism made him look at Mei in a different light. Dustless was expressionless, but his heart was extremely strange. He didn't know what Reikage would do if he knew that Mei was a spy. Gaara and Tsunade both nodded. They chose to fight against the Akatsuki, and there was no way out. You're quite motivated, but unfortunately you're doomed to die. The masked man had already expected such a result. He sat on the gravel casually and said, "Since the fall of Hashirama, no one in the world is my opponent. If you hand over the Nibi, I can reluctantly let you live, but unfortunately." After that, the masked man looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. His complicated tone was full of unworthiness, as if the 5 big countries were bound to be destroyed. His calm attitude made even Wuxia frown, not to mention the 5 shadows. Looking at Obito, who was completely obsessed with the role of Uchiha Madara, his mouth squirmed. When he was about to speak, a light flashed in his mind, and Dustless took back the words he was about to say. As a bystander, Wuxia carefully savored the scene in front of him. He played a different role and quietly observed the 2 groups of people with the eyes of a fisherman. Dustless. A sigh suddenly came, and the tone was filled with endless decay. Dustless was slightly stunned. He looked up and happened to meet the masked man's gaze. Madara-sama. After secretly greeting the 18 generations of Obito's ancestors, Wuxia reluctantly said respectfully. At present he still had to cooperate with Obito, this kid, to perform this play. "I'll let you jump in front of the stage first. I'll end it later." Thousands of unhappiness and complaints poured into the heart. The light in Dustless's eyes disappeared in a flash. He chose to turn a blind eye. He was not a kid like Sasuke who couldn't rub sand in his eyes. There was no need to care about some trivial things. Seeing Dustless so obedient, the masked man's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. And then he said calmly, "The value of Rinnegan can't be perfectly explained by Nagato. Now you're going to take him back." He thought that he would have to use some special means to subdue Dustless, but the development of things was surprisingly smooth. The masked man was indeed a little surprised. However, the masked man was suspicious by nature. The smoother things were, the more doubts he had. The hostility and oppression in the three Tomo Sharingan were all converged and replaced with a sense of seeing through everything. His wise eyes looked at Dustless. After a while, the masked man shook his head gently. He didn't see anything for a long time. He was secretly wary of Dustless. He didn't think that pretending to be Uchiha Madara would cause Dustless to worship him. "It's a small matter." With a slight smile, Dustless promised. For him, this was just a small matter of eating and drinking. He didn't say much, and with a golden luster floating all over his body, he turned into a rainbow and left the scene. Seeing this scene, the five Kage looked at each other and could see the astonishment and disbelief in each other's eyes. He can make Uchiha Dustless bow down to him. Is he really Uchiha Madara? Inoki's brows were tightly knitted together. He sneered at the idea that the masked man was Uchiha Madara. However, Dustless was so determined to obey the orders of the masked man, which made Inoki's heart doubtful. The strong pay attention to face. If this masked man was just a cat or a dog, and he made Dustless bow his head, it was really unscientific. Is this guy really Uchiha Madara? Inoki's face was gloomy. If the masked man was really Uchiha Madara, then Dustless's obedience to his orders was understandable. His thoughts rolled, and his mind began to recall the shocking battle in the Valley of the End, not letting go of any details. "I'll let you have a good time, after the Jubi resurrects. I'll settle all the old and new accounts together." The corner of his mouth slightly raised, and his face evoked a sneer. Dustless thought that there was nothing wrong with Obito jumping to the front to attract the attention of the five Kage. After the resurrection of the Jubi, directly taking it by force was in line with Dustless's thoughts. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito will both stand aside. "Sorry, Conan, I can only give the Rinnegan to Obito for the time being." With a sigh, Dustless was also helpless. If he wanted to continue to use Obito, it was necessary to transfer the Rinnegan to him. Some necessary techniques have an inseparable connection with the Rinnegan. Without the Rinnegan, Obito will be greatly limited. Afterwards, recapture the Rinnegan and give it to Conan for safekeeping. After all, it was Nagato's relic. Even if the source was Uchiha Madara, now it was undoubtedly Nagato's. Dustless would naturally give Conan an explanation. Chapter 329. In the blue sky, strong wind and waves were blowing, and it was full of violent power fluctuations. The floating clouds were blown into the sky and turned into dust. Looking around, the ground was full of potholes. The potholes of different sizes were like the surface of the moon. They were scattered like stars in the night sky. In the void, the power that hasn't dissipated yet pulled the air and completely crushed it, forming a large vacuum area filled with suffocating danger. Uzumaki Naruto and Kyuubi's chakra were clearly visible. The dazzling golden luster covered a large area. Naruto, who was in Kyuubi's mouth, held his hands in front of him, looking down at the half-dead person lying in the pit in front of him, with an indifferent and confident smile on his face. Today, Naruto was no longer the kid who didn't understand the common sense of the world. He also had his own dream, Naruto's dream, which was also his motivation to become stronger. This kid's hatred for the Akatsuki is quite big, or maybe it's me. Pushing away the green leaves blocking his sight, Dustless looked at Naruto, who had entered the Kyuubi mode in the distance, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. If there's one person that Naruto hates the most, it's undoubtedly himself. Naruto's parents, his teacher Kakashi, and his relatives, including Jiraiya, were all directly or indirectly buried in Dustless's hands. It can be said that his hatred is as deep as the sea. Naturally, the Akatsuki organization that Wuchin belonged to was also taken care of by Naruto. Whoosh! Just as he was sighing with emotion, A sharp sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the front. A dense power of destruction, containing an energy fluctuation that was enough to destroy everything in the world, came from the front. Dustless was slightly stunned. He subconsciously raised his head and saw a huge black sphere. Rude and violent kid. Wuchen calmly stared at the Bijadama that was whizzing over. His expression was rather helpless. His words revealed a kind of headache and hopeless feeling. However, his eyes were leisurely and carefree. He definitely didn't place the Bijadama in his eyes. Sage Mode's perception was extremely powerful. Dustless wasn't far from Naruto, only a few dozen feet away. He didn't hide his aura, so it was reasonable for him to detect Dustless's existence. But how can this kind of pure physical attack work on me? You're not the same type of person as me. With a hint of mockery in his eyes, Dustless's body lost its texture and turned into a mass of light. Naruto's painstakingly condensed Bijadama missed its target. It rolled over Dustless's body but couldn't touch him. Boom. An unprecedented explosion sounded out from the ground behind him, and a white light that overflowed into the sky swept up. The area that was enveloped by the white light was in a mess, and everything was torn apart. A huge crater with a diameter of several kilometers appeared on the ground. It's my turn now. Dustless's indifferent face was replaced by a grim expression. He raised his right arm gently and opened his palm. His right eye also turned blue, and a trace of coldness flashed through his eye sockets. Boom. A strong repulsive force surged out of his raised palm. It was like a transparent meteor streaking across the sky, causing ripples to appear in the boundless void. Boom. The heavy air cannon hit Kyuubi's face head-on, and the powerful force directly knocked him into the air and slammed on the ground, creating a long and narrow gully. Tenseigen is different from Rinnegan. The repulsive force can be released, and it's not centered on the user. Rinnegan's Shinra Tensei is centered on the user, but Tenseigen's repulsive force can be released out of thin air, just like this attack, unpredictable and impossible to defend against. This guy really has a lot of abilities. Chakra Condensed Kyuubi couldn't help but be speechless. Every time he fought with Dustless, he would use a new way to attack, and it was all unheard of. Be careful, he also knows Shodai-sama's Mokuton. Naruto's face flashed with caution. To some extent, the existence of Mokuton ninjutsu was specially arranged to deal with Bijou. Here it comes, Naruto. Kyuubi suddenly roared, his huge head looked at the sky, and he could clearly see countless cylindrical mahogany pouring down. And the number was dense like a rainstorm. Whoosh. Whoosh. Without even thinking, Ninetails opened her mouth and revealed her dense fangs. Several small black balls shot out like bullets towards the round divine wood that was falling from the sky. The small Bijadama was much more powerful, and it contained the power of nature. Obviously, Uzumaki Naruto added seasoning to achieve the effect of a fatal blow. Boom. 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 The falling mahogany was directly hit by the Bijadama, and it burst open, and a blazing fire wave burned in the air, swallowing the mahogany into smoke. Idiot, the bright god gate is just a bait. With a sneer in his eyes, Dustless suddenly printed with one hand, and the calm chakra began to rampage, and a huge vitality overflowed from his body. Deep in the ground, countless dark green mahogany began to tumble, rolling under the ground like snakes, rushing toward the ground. Kyuubi and Naruto's feet kept jumping, as if something was about to break out of the ground. Kyuubi's eyes flashed with instinctive fear. It seems that it's Mokuton. What kind of monster is this guy? He has Sharingan beyond Mangekyo, and he also has Mokuton that Bijou are most afraid of. He even knows Senjutsu. Kyuubi's eyes were as big as a brass ring, and he cursed. He used his strength to the limit, and calmly escaped from the turbulent ground under his feet. Want to escape? The ground is the home of Mokuton. There's no place for you to step on. Mokuton. Would Mahogany Jutsu. Chapter 330. The ground within a radius of 100 feet trembled violently. At first, it was only a slight tremor, but with Dustless's continuous release of chakra, the magnitude of the tremor became more and more extensive. Kakaka, the ground shattered, and the twisted green wood condensed together and whistled toward Kyuubi. The green wood at the front suddenly turned into a ferocious dragon head, and swept toward Kyuubi. It easily entangled the nine-tailed beast, so that it could not move. Kacha, high-density chakra erupted, and Kyuubi's condensed chakra shone brighter. Its whole body was covered with a dazzling golden light like the sun. Its power was infinite, and it easily tore apart the Mokuton that entangled it with brute force. After all, Kyuubi was the strongest among the tailed beasts. Now it was in collusion with Uzumaki Naruto. After integrating Naruto's senjutsu, its strength was greatly enhanced. Ow ow ow! An earth-shattering roar came from Kyuubi's mouth, and the spreading power turned into an invisible impact. In an instant, a large number of green wood was destroyed and crushed. Not bad. Seeing this, Dustless frowned. Kyuubi's strength after integrating senjutsu could be described as earth-shattering. It vividly interpreted the essence of the word destruction. It was fine if it didn't move, but if it moved, it would cause the world to collapse. That's it. With a relieved smile, the chaotic Mokuton on the ground bloomed again. New buds grew on the dense roots, containing majestic vitality. Because Dustless kept providing chakra, it became 100-meter-long wood in just a moment. The growth speed was amazing, which was one of the reasons why Mokuton was difficult to compete with. Not only could it absorb the opponent's chakra, but as long as it had chakra, it could grow without limit. Gulp, so strong. Even if Uzumaki Naruto hated Dustless, he had to admit that Dustless's strength was beyond his imagination. It was difficult to compete with him with his own strength. Once entangled by these endless trees, even if Kyuubi's chakra was infinite, it would be absorbed by these endless trees. There is a limit to how strong others are. How come that bastard doesn't even have a limit? Looking around, Naruto saw that the surrounding area had turned into a forest in the blink of an eye. Naruto's face was full of astonishment. He smacked his lips and almost bit his tongue. These Mokuton were all produced by Dustless's chakra. From this, it could be seen the amount of chakra in Dustless's body. This guy has more chakra than me. Bastard. Even Kyuubi, an old guy who lived for thousands of years, was furious. He was most proud of his chakra content, but now it was obviously insufficient compared to Dustless. With his chakra content, he couldn't squander it wantonly like Dustless. Infinite chakra could deceive others, but Kyuubi's heart was like a mirror. There was no absolute existence. Everything had its own limit, and he also had his own limit. Dustless gave Kyuubi a feeling of infinite chakra. The majestic chakra seemed to be the source of chakra, inexhaustible. With such a large-scale Mokuton, Dustless didn't even take a breath, let alone having chakra exhausted. These Mokuton. With the slow passage of time, the growth of the trees didn't decrease, but continued to expand, covering a large area and dividing it into its own territory. Kill them with one blow, Kyuubi. Seeing the situation wasn't good, Naruto's pupils emitted a cold light, and his anger rose as he said hatefully, "Letting Mokuton grow endlessly like this is asking for trouble." Chakra condensed. Kyuubi nodded deeply. He was deeply aware of the danger of Mokuton. In the past, he and Uchiha Madara joined forces in front of Senju Hashirama. Without any nonsense, Kyuubi opened his mouth and began to gather chakra. "You still have confidence." Seeing Kyuubi open his mouth and begin to gather Baijidama with all his strength, Dustless's eyes flashed with a sneer. His 5 fingers suddenly closed, and the boundless forest changed again. Several giant green trees more than 20 meters long rose from the ground. There were pink buds growing at the top, filled with a strong fragrance, and it was quite pungent. With a light sniff, one would feel dizzy, and the whole body would begin to fall. It was not difficult to imagine how terrible these buds would be when they all bloomed. "Open for me." After a while, with Dustless's shout, the buds completely bloomed. An unknown yellow smoke floated out. A breeze blew, and the unknown smoke spread to every corner of the sky. Boom! Kyuubi, who was concentrating on gathering Baijidama, suddenly fell to the ground. An unprecedented feeling of powerlessness spread throughout his body, and the condensed Baijidama also burst. This flower fragrance has such an ability. Shaking his head, Kyuubi tried to wake himself up. This strange flower fragrance, as long as he smelled it, he would feel weak all over his body, and his nerves would be paralyzed. "Naruto, although I don't want to admit it, we can only retreat now." It's unrealistic to fight him alone. If we want to deal with him, we need more power. Releasing a majestic murderous intent, the surrounding temperature dropped to the freezing point. QB calmed down and tried to keep his mind as much as possible. Dustless in the distance was indifferent and calm. From beginning to end he didn't even move his feet. His calm appearance made QB have to accept this cruel reality. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Damn flash bastard. Naruto's scarlet cross-shaped eyes became deeper and clearer. Naruto was unwilling to give up. He could only suppress his dissatisfaction. As Kurama said, the difference between the two sides was too big. Retreat. The hesitation on his face was replaced by determination. Naruto shouted, "As long as there's life, there's hope." After gathering a large number of companions, it's not too late to deal with him. Boom boom boom. Looking up, QB's figure became more and more blurred, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chapter 331. Looking at the dissipating golden body indifferently, Dustless didn't stop it. He didn't want to know Uzumaki Naruto's intention. This kind of thing should be left to the masked man. In addition, Dustless also thought that the resurrection of Jubi was a good thing. His eyes suddenly turned and fell into the pit in the distance. Dustless's body began to float and flew straight over. The scene in front of him was quite miserable. The ground was full of torn pieces of clothes, scattered on the ground like snow, and the broken limbs could be clearly seen. The scene was like purgatory on earth. "Oh, that rude boy is really terrible. Will he treat me like this in the future?" Looking at the broken limbs with lingering fear, Dustless's eyes were unnatural, and he couldn't help but feel cold. He was the one who killed Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Namikaze Minato. But this boy treated pain so cruelly. It could be seen that this boy hated Dustless and hated Akatsuki. "I can't fall into Naruto's hands even if I die." The majestic perception spread out. Dustless perceived the range of Nagato's body. Although he said that he was worried about others, it was not difficult to hear from his frivolous tone that he didn't put Naruto in his eyes at all. He completely regarded him as a joke. "Let's reassemble your bodies." Looking around, Dustless sighed. After all, Pain and the others were also implicated. Helping them to fix the bodies was the most benevolent thing he could do. In the dark cave, or rather, in the cave made of tree branches, a red-haired man could be seen. Even though his figure couldn't be seen clearly, it could be vaguely seen that his body was extremely thin and small. It was as if his entire body had been sucked dry, leaving only a layer of frightening skin and bones. His eye sockets were sunken, and his purplish eyes were dilated. They were dim and lifeless. "Nagato." Konan looked at Uzumaki Nagato with a complicated expression, with crystal tears in the corner of her eyes. She could feel that Nagato's vitality was rapidly fading. Her childhood friend was now leaving her son. Where should she go? Half of his body had already stepped into the gates of hell. Everyone dies eventually. Don't be sad, Xiaonan." Seeing Konan so sad, Uzumaki Nagato's pale face showed a soft smile, and he whispered, "You still have a long way to go. Konan, you have to look to the future." Uzumaki Nagato breathed a sigh of relief. When Yahiko fell, Konan was his only friend. It seemed that he was at the end of his life. Nagato's face had a touch of redness, and his spirit was full. He felt like he was reborn. "Although I don't know what's going on, I can tell how you feel about Dustless." With a wry smile, Nagato sighed. "I wanted you to monitor that guy with unknown motives. I didn't expect that kid to cheat your heart. I really don't know what kind of virtue he has, but it's good. If you stay with that guy, your safety will be guaranteed." Konan was silent. She didn't like Dustless, but the two of them had been together for many years. It was inevitable that she had subtle feelings for Dustless. It was a kind of pure dependence. For me, death is also a kind of relief. These years, every day felt like a year, living in the nightmare of Yahiko. With a sigh of relief, Nagato's face was full of relief. The pressure on his chest disappeared, and his breathing was particularly smooth. He stared at Konan and said in a deep voice, "This is your private matter. Remember that masked man who claims to be Uchiha Madara. He's definitely not a good person. He has declared war on the 5 major countries, and soon the whole world will start to go crazy. The big tree made of paper trees was suddenly forced open. An array of dazzling sunlight shone in, followed by Dustless's whole body. There were 5 bodies floating behind him, but they were perfectly restored by Dustless. Unfortunately, no ninjutsu can resurrect you. Your soul has collapsed. After staring at Nagato for a moment, Dustless sighed. Once a person's soul collapsed and disappeared, even the Rinsei Tensei couldn't resurrect him. You know about the Rinsei Tensei Jutsu? Hearing this, Uzumaki Nagato's eyes widened, and he looked at Dustless in surprise. He didn't mention this resurrection ninjutsu to outsiders, but now Dustless knew about it. How could he not be surprised? This is very simple because staring at the whirlpool Nagato, Dustless didn't need to hide anything. His left eye changed sharply, and the deep black pupil suddenly changed, with circles of black lines, and a purple eye was exposed in front of Nagato and Konan. I have the same eyes as you. The only difference was that there were 9 black magatama hanging from the black lines. Dustless's powerful voice came out of his mouth. At the same time, he deliberately cooperated with Dustless. The black magatama in his eye sockets rippled, and the berserk eye power was abnormally terrifying. It gave off an extremely evil feeling. Looking at Dustless's right eye in horror, Uzumaki Nagato took a deep breath. It was undoubtedly the Rinnegan, but its power was far beyond his. This is the Rinsei Sharingan. Looking at Nagato's horrified eyes, Dustless was calm, looking at his Rinnegan and faintly explained. The limit of the Uchiha Sharingan evolution is the legendary Rinnegan. Your eyes were transplanted from someone else's. You may feel surprised, but it's undeniable that this is a fact. Chapter 332. The evolution of the Sharingan is 3 Tomo Mangekyo Eternal Mangekyo Rinnegan. However, for thousands of years, only Uchiha Madara has successfully evolved the Rinnegan. Dustless's Rinnegan Sharingan was obtained by the system, while Otsutsuki's Hagoromo was inherited, and Sasuke's was opened by the gift of the Rakudo Sennin. Step by step, the only one who got the Rinnegan Sharingan was Madara. Impossible. If the extreme evolution of the Uchiha Sharingan is Rinnegan, then Nagato Konan immediately refuted Dustless's words, but it was as if a bone was stuck in her throat. She couldn't speak at all. If what Dustless said was true, then Nagato's life was shrouded in a huge conspiracy. He was secretly manipulated like a puppet. However, Uzumaki Nagato's face was extremely calm, as if he wasn't talking about him, expressionless. Now the past is no longer important to me. It's because of fate, and it's because of fate. No matter who the owner of these eyes is, it doesn't matter to me. Uzumaki Nagato just smiled, and there was a kind of smile on his face. You're quite open-minded. Seeing Nagato so free and easy, Dustless couldn't help but respect him, and suddenly found that this guy suddenly had a human side. What are you going to do with the Rinnegan? His eyes fell on Dustless, and Nagato was quite curious. According to Dustless's statement, the Rinnegan didn't belong to Dustless. It was the person who gave him the Rinnegan in the past. The Rinnegan is like a floating cloud to me, and I'll give it to him temporarily. Of course, it's only temporary. Dustless's eyes were filled with killing intent. Dustless's him was naturally the masked man Obito. The reason why he gave it to him was because of the Geto Mazo. Although it's possible to have both the blood of the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan, Obito without the Rinnegan obviously couldn't. Is there any other way to heal Nagato? Her beautiful eyes stared at Dustless with hope. Konan clenched her fists. For her, the ownership of Rinnegan was not important. The only important thing was that this most important family member would not leave her. Looking into Konan's eyes, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of pity, but he still shook his head and said, "Flowers bloom and wilt, the sun rises from the east. These are the laws of heaven and earth that cannot be violated. Nagato's soul has been corroded, and even I can't save him." Dustless's tone was bleak and lonely. Life was short. In just a few decades, it was a pile of yellow soil. Especially Nagato, who was shrouded in Madara's nightmare all his life, was even more tragic. Looking at the past few decades, they were all puppets in the hands of others. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed since the last incident. On the green grass, 2 black figures stood there, no one spoke. In front of the 2 were 2 tombstones, on which were the names of Uzumaki Nagato and Yahiko. After a fierce battle with Uzumaki Naruto, Nagato could not resist the erosion of Rinnegan for several years, and completely fell. "Are you sure you want to continue the mission with me, Conan?" Looking at Conan's calm face, Dustless whispered. "In fact, even if you give up the mission of the Akatsuki, you can leave safely. There is no need to stay in such a dark organization and live a normal human life." Dustless said calmly. If Conan wanted to leave the Akatsuki, he would not stop her. There is no need. After glancing at Yahiko and Nagato's tombstones, Conan looked at Dustless seriously and said, "Whether it's Uchiha Madara or Uchiha Obito, anyone who uses Yahiko and Nagato, even if they are gods, I will kill them. This little girl's temper is not small, but fortunately, I was smart enough to put all the blame on Madara and Obito." Seeing Conan's look of wanting to tear Madara and Obito to pieces, Dustless felt more fortunate that he explained the truth. But then again, Conan stared at Dustless with a puzzled look and asked, "That man named Uchiha Obito, how can he compete with the ninjas of the 5 major countries? His mantissa can't play a fundamental role. The power of a bijou is enough to destroy the world, but the ninjas of the 5 major countries are even more powerful. If things go wrong, the masked man may really capsize." Because of the white Zetsu army inside the Ghetto Mazo, with a gloomy look, Dustless explained in a heavy tone. On the surface, the white Zetsu soldiers were trained by the Ghetto Mazo, but in fact, they were the incarnations of humans who fell into the infinite Tsukuyomi in ancient times. In the world besides Black Zetsu, only Dustless knew the secret. In short, that guy will take the lead, and we will take the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Let him play with the ninjas of the 5 major countries. Wu Chen sneered. The day before yesterday, Nagato's relic, the Rinnegan, was handed over to the masked man unscathed. Even if the kid wore a mask, Wu Chen knew that his heart was blooming like a flower, like eating honey, and even at that time he used his eloquence mouth escape to fool Wu Chen. At the same time, with a pair of Rinnegan, Obito's strength will skyrocket, and it means that the Ghetto Mazo and the bijou will fall into his hands. "Kid, is it really okay to secretly eavesdrop on an old couple like this?" Suddenly, Dustless's words made Conan's face suddenly collapse, and when she was about to question Dustless, an indifferent young figure suddenly came into sight. Xiaonan looked at the young man who had suddenly appeared in surprise. A trace of astonishment flashed in her eyes. Even she had not noticed any trace of this young man with an imposing appearance. Chapter 333. His slightly messy hair fluttered in the wind, and his thin body swayed in the hurricane. The young man's eyes were cold and sharp like a blade, making people not dare to look at him. The long sword on his waist added a little bit of dominance to the young man. His eyes were bright like stars, giving people the feeling that they could touch the stars above the 9th heaven. That awe-inspiring temperament was the opposite of Dustless's casual and gentle temperament. It was Uchiha Sasuke, the brother of Uchiha. Looking at Dustless with cold eyes, Sasuke stared at Dustless with scarlet eyes. His expression was gloomy, his face was pale, and his aura was faintly morbid. Under Dustless's astonished gaze, Sasuke's pupils began to rotate rapidly, and surging eye power shot out, making the air flow around all stagnate. This Sharingan is obviously not an ordinary Sharingan. It has a special pattern that has never been seen before. It seems to be the same Mangekyo as Dustless and Itachi. The Uchiha clan is really favored by God. Conan's eyebrows wrinkled, and she cautiously said, "The Uchiha clan's Sharingan is mysterious and unpredictable, both offensive and defensive. The world's understanding of the Uchiha clan is one-sided, blindly thinking that it's just for show. After evolving into Mangekyo Sharingan, its invincible physical attack can even kill a god." The scene was oppressive. Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan stared at Dustless, and his whole body was shrouded in a looming aura. The Kusanagi sword on his waist has not yet been unsheathed, but it already shot out a sharp light that could cut everything. "Oh, my stupid brother!" The cold atmosphere was broken by this inexplicable sudden voice. Whether it was Conan or Sasuke, they both looked stagnant, and the corners of their mouths twitched. They looked at Dustless with a smile on his face. He was the initiator. Sasuke's cold eyes stared at Wuxia, and his murderous aura was exposed. The majestic murderous aura roared out, and imprisoned Wuxia like a cage. The oppressive killing intent caused people to have illusions of hesitation. If they were not careful, they would be immersed in it and unable to extricate themselves. You're still as naive as ever. But since you've activated your Mangekyo Sharingan, does that mean you've already killed Itachi? You're even willing to kill your own brother. You're really cold-blooded and heartless. With a casual wave of his hand, the thick murderous aura that filled Dustless's body instantly disintegrated and dispersed like a fog. Although Dustless didn't know the result of the previous decisive battle between Itachi and Sasuke, he assumed that Itachi deliberately lost. Awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan means that you already know the truth about Itachi. Looking at Sasuke's eyes with a smile, Dustless said softly, "The way to open Mangekyo Sharingan is extremely extreme. One must witness the death of a loved one to open Mangekyo Sharingan." Sasuke hated Itachi so much before knowing the truth. Obviously, it was impossible for him to open his eyes. Now that he has revealed his Mangekyo Sharingan, he knows the truth about the destruction of the Uchiha clan. "It seems that you've succeeded in killing Itachi." Looking at Sasuke thoughtfully, Dustless sneered. "How does it feel to kill your beloved brother in the past? This kind of feeling can only be enjoyed by you alone in the world." Dustless's words immediately reminded Sasuke of the scene of killing Itachi a few days ago, and his face turned pale. "You really know the truth about Itachi. Bastard! Why did you bastards hide it from me?" Looking at Dustless angrily, Sasuke asked hatefully. His eyes were locked on Dustless, and his words revealed his killing intent. He couldn't wait to see Dustless's skin and bones. "It seems that the masked man has already told you the truth about Itachi, so he made you open Mangekyo Sharingan. He's really cunning." Frowning deeply, Dustless frowned. This can also be regarded as an invisible closer relationship between the masked man and Sasuke, killing several birds with one stone. Not only can it draw closer to Sasuke, but it can also arouse his hatred towards Dustless. From then on, the most important thing is to help Sasuke open Mangekyo Sharingan. What a conceited and arrogant guy. Do you think you are the reincarnation of a god? Ridiculous. Who do you think gave you your current achievements? Even your Mangekyo Sharingan and your current strength. Are they all because of your own hard work? Looking at Sasuke contemptuously, Dustless rolled his eyes. His face was cold and ruthless. "I'm sorry to tell you, all of this was given to you by Itachi. If it weren't for him, you would still be a clown living in your brother's world. If it weren't for Itachi, you wouldn't even be a fart now." Dustless made the final decision to define this annoying third brother. He's just a shadow living in Itachi's world. Without Itachi's guidance, his achievements won't be complimented. Staring at Sasuke, Dustless sneered again and again. He didn't expect a verbal attack to defeat him. After all, this kid's perseverance is really huge. "You really have a lot of nonsense. I just want to ask you, is what the masked man said true?" Sasuke asked in a hoarse voice. In the end, his tone was completely commanding. The six-pointed star in his eyes rotated rapidly, and his sight was focused on Dustless. As long as Dustless avoided the important things, or answered him perfunctorily, he will directly kill Dustless. "You're very arrogant." Lips squirming, Dustless's eyes flashed a ruthless smile, and he was about to teach this kid a lesson. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind, and he suddenly found that he can take advantage of Sasuke. Wuxia looked at Sasuke with torch-like eyes and replied solemnly, and at the same time, he shamelessly added himself to it. "Indeed, as you think, Itachi died in Konoha's tragedy. Just like myself, I was deceived by the guys in Konoha's ninja village." Chapter 334. Conan's clean face became unnatural, and her eyes subconsciously looked at Dustless. When she was about to speak, she was stared back by Dustless's ferocious eyes, and she closed her red lips. "What does it have to do with you? Betraying Konoha seems to be your personal reason. They didn't force you to do anything dark back then. Sasuke raised his eyebrows and asked in puzzlement. He wasn't a person who could be easily fooled. Itachi had already told him about some unknown secrets, and they naturally referred to the higher-ups of Konoha. You are too naive. What you see is only the surface of things. Hearing this, Dustless's face became cold, and he said righteously, I don't need to tell you about the Uchiha clan's Kekkei Genkai. The reason why they are called the most powerful clan in Konoha is because of the Sharingan. Konoha's decades of peaceful and stable development have a lot to do with the Uchiha. Dustless wasn't talking nonsense about this. Without the Uchiha clan, Konoha's prosperity might have been extinguished years ago. What are you trying to say? Sasuke's voice was low, and he was on guard against Dustless. That voice full of magic made him dizzy, and even lost himself. If it wasn't for several years of devilish training and strong willpower, he might have already fallen into Dustless's trap. The power of the Uchiha clan helped Konoha to achieve peace, but everything has two sides, so it made Konoha afraid. After all, the relationship between the Uchiha clan and many clans in Konoha during the Warring States period was not harmonious, and some clans were inevitably afraid of the Uchiha clan. Dustless's words were also true, and there were indeed countless clans who were afraid of the Uchiha clan, and they played many tricks. Those clans who were afraid of the Uchiha clan inevitably had other ideas, such as encouraging the higher-ups of Konoha to deal with the Uchiha clan. So to some extent, it wasn't the higher-ups of Konoha who destroyed the Uchiha clan, but the entire Konoha ninja village. Dustless's eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised a fox-like smile, giving people a feeling of extra evil and bad intentions. Don't you think it's strange why Itachi slaughtered the Uchiha clan, Sasuke? Regardless of the change in Sasuke's expression, Dustless clenched his fists and said indignantly, it was because of the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha more than 10 years ago, which caused serious losses, that led to Konoha's high-level hatred of the Uchiha clan, especially after the subsequent attack on Konoha, which completely led to the separation of the two sides. That is to say, because of the Kyuubi's two attacks, Konoha suffered heavy losses, so Konoha's higher-ups hate the Uchiha clan so much. Sasuke was a smart person. After hearing Dustless's words, he instantly understood the cause and effect. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Just because the Berserk Kyuubi attacked Konoha, you want to put the blame on Uchiha and forget Uchiha's decades of achievements? Sasuke, you really are a whimsical person. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head slightly and whispered, Konoha didn't like the Uchiha clan. The world knows that only the Uchiha clan's Sharingan can control the Bijou. There is no need for specific and clear evidence. This reason is the best excuse to destroy the Uchiha clan. This is the case in this world. For the strong, killing you doesn't need an excuse or reason. It depends on their own will. Konoha's fist is much bigger than the Uchiha clan, so the Uchiha clan deserve to be destroyed. Are you unwilling, Sasuke? Do you want to take revenge on Konoha? Go, use your new strength to destroy Konoha, and let the light of the Uchiha clan shroud the world again. Dustless said loudly. His tone was full of endless magic, and Sasuke's bright eyes were obviously affected and dimmed. His eyes gently lifted and fell on Sasuke's face. Seeing his ferocious appearance, Dustless's mouth flashed a strange smile of a successful conspiracy. A mere fledgling wants to fight with me. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless's deep eyes seemed to be able to penetrate Sasuke's mind. Seeing that he fell into his own bewitchment, his mind was chaotic, and he lost the ability to think. Dustless suddenly smiled proudly. Just when Dustless thought that Sasuke was bewitched by him, and would find trouble with Konoha, a cold sneer sounded. Vulgar. How can such a terrible genjutsu control me? You think too highly of yourself. At the same time, you also underestimate me after my rebirth. Sasuke, who recovered from his trance, casually looked at Dustless. Contempt flashed in his eyes, and he stood up, revealing half of his face, and the scarlet hexagram emitted a cold light. Whether it's Konoha or Kyuubi, they are all the targets of Uchiha and Itachi's pain, so naturally, I can't let them go. And you, Uchiha Dustless, don't use this vulgar genjutsu on me in the future, it's boring. After that, Sasuke simply turned away, regardless of Konan and Dustless behind him, and walked straight forward. When did you use Genjutsu on him? Konan, who recovered from her shock, walked to Dustless and asked in surprise. She couldn't help but look at the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Just now Dustless didn't even use Sharingan, but normal human eyes. Genjutsu? Are you kidding me? I don't remember when I used Genjutsu. Staring at Sasuke's collapsed figure, Dustless shrugged helplessly, and said in a confused tone. Maybe I was too addicted to the role of the speaker, to the extent that it was fake. That kid actually had an illusion, and his mind was blank for a short time, thinking that I released Genjutsu on him. Also, do you think that if I used Genjutsu on this kid, with his weak eyes, he could resist? Chapter 335. Dustless and Sasuke's eye power are very different. If he really uses his eye power to control him, Sasuke can't resist. After all, the gap between the two sides is obvious to all. Sasuke is just a street goods, Manjikyu Sharingan, and Dustless has Tensigen and Rinnegan at the same time. Their combat power is not at the same level. I was expecting him to attack Konoha, but I didn't expect him to attack Kyuubi Naruto as well. Dustless is just counting on Sasuke to attack Konoha. As for Kyuubi, he doesn't think Sasuke has the ability to defeat him. The current Uzumaki Naruto is not the same as before, and Sasuke can't compare to him at all. As the news of the masked man declaring war on the 5 major countries spread, the whole world was in an uproar, and they all scolded the masked man for being brainless and incurable. The power of the 5 major countries is unprecedented. Even if Uchiha Madara is really reincarnated, he is not 100% sure that he can face the 5 major countries and be safe and sound. Large and small countries have also begun to prepare for war, and all of them are betting on the 5 major countries. After all, the other party is not an unknown organization. In the face of the fierce 5 major countries, they are absolutely unwilling to defeat them. After the masked man declared war on the 5 Kage, both sides did not make specific moves. War is not a game, it involves all aspects, and it must take a period of time to match various materials. At the very least, the transfer of relevant personnel must be harmonious. In the dark cave, the ferocious giant was clearly visible. Its uneven body was like a ghost, and its sturdy and tall body contained a powerful force that could destroy everything. Its 9 huge eyes were even more ferocious and terrifying. Under the feet of the giant, there was a round pool of liquid. The pool was extremely wide, and it was filled with an unknown green liquid. The dense white figures could be clearly seen. At a glance, the number was definitely not less than tens of thousands. It's a white Zetsu army. These white Zetsu are enough to deal with the insects of the 5 major countries. The masked man looked down at the group of white Zetsu, and his Rinnegan flashed with satisfaction and confidence. Even if those ninjas have great skills, they will have to pay a heavy price in the face of such a large number of white Zetsu. The Akatsuki had already collapsed. Currently, only Ju, Ghost Shark, Dustless, and Konan were left. The rest of the members had all died in battle. The Akatsuki only existed in name. Because Dustless took the initiative to hand over the Rinnegan to the masked man, Konan also avoided death, and now the teammate is still Dustless. The masked man also confessed the identity of Uchiha Madara to Kisame. Although the latter was surprised, he reluctantly accepted the masked man's statement and was willing to continue to serve the Akatsuki. The ninjas of the 5 major countries have gathered, and their 5 Kages are holding a meeting. The content is naturally to deal with us. I'm afraid that soon they will launch an attack. Closing his eyes, Dustless's eyes flashed with a strange glint. Then he said with a calm expression, "That woman should fulfill the covenant. She should know the price of betraying me." Silently closing his eyes, Dustless secretly thought. The covenant between him and Terumi was naturally to find the Nibi's Jinchuriki, and Dustless's condition was to not hurt the ninjas of the mist. Of course, it's just not hurting them. Taking their chakra is not in this agreement. Unbelievable. I didn't expect that the 5 major countries would abandon their grudges and come together. Ghost Shark said to himself with a strange expression. Inoki once killed the father of the fourth Raikage, the third Raikage, and the second Hokage of Konoha once died in the Cloud Village. The Sand Village also had an unsolvable feud with the Rock Village and Konoha. It's not just the 5 big countries, even the other small countries are involved. Even small countries like the Snow Country and the Iron Country are involved. Conan said coldly. These unknown small countries wanted to take advantage of the situation. Their idea was too ridiculous. As long as they did something, they had to pay the price. Small countries. Hearing this, Wuchen glanced at Xiao Nan, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Even the power of those small countries should not be underestimated. Not to mention changing the situation of the war, they could easily change the situation in a small area. Don't care about those small things, the main goal is the Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito. After that, the whole world will be our enemy, and there's no need to be afraid of them. With contempt in his eyes, Obito said confidently. At that time, not only the ninjas of the 5 major countries, but also you, will be in my bag. The masked man's eyes spread out, glancing at Conan and Ghost Shark, sneering secretly. These so-called companions will become the sad nourishment under the infinite Tsukuyomi. His purpose is very simple. After resurrecting the Jubi, he will become the new Jubi's Jinchuriki, and immediately use the majestic chakra to implement the strongest genjutsu in the world, infinite Tsukuyomi. At that time, the so-called companions will naturally fall into the eternal dream world. I will become a new god of creation, meet Rin again in the dream world, and live a happy life. The masked man's eyes were full of infinite longing, as if he had already become the Jubi's Jinchuriki, obtained the power of the 6 paths, and created a new dream world. Suddenly he felt a pair of cold eyes full of ridicule secretly peeking at him. The masked man's eyes became clear and he subconsciously looked to the right. This guy. Turning around, what came into view was Wu Qun, or rather his strange face. Dustless's lips were raised high, and his eyes were narrowed, or simply closed, because he couldn't see his eyeballs at all. A haze flashed in the masked man's eyes. Just now he seemed to have become a big fat sheep. Chapter 336. The masked man's eyes flashed with killing intent. This feeling made him quite uncomfortable, whether it was an illusion or real. He wanted to kill Dustless. There was no other reason. He instinctively felt a fatal threat from Dustless. I'll let you live for a while. Once I've squeezed out all your value, I'll wipe you out completely. I'll get rid of the trash that obstructs the peace of this world forever. Retracting his gaze, the masked man pretended that he didn't see anything, but he swore in his heart that as long as he becomes the Jubi's Jinchuriki, the first target to be erased will be this Uchiha Dustless. Dustless always gives him a very strong sense of oppression, even more than Uchiha Madara. In any case, Madara has disappeared, and Dustless, this new Uchiha Madara, is rapidly rising, and the masked man has realized that he was enough to threaten him. Ambitious. Unfortunately, the ideal is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Dustless was unmoved, and he thought about it. No one would be willing to be reduced to a chess piece, and the resistance of the masked man was something he expected. In the dimly lit secret room, many experimental bodies could be clearly seen. Most of them were soaked in an unknown solution, and there were stitched wounds on their bodies. Most of the experimental bodies were human. Their eyes were closed, and they looked pale and powerless with fear, as if they had been tortured by fear before. A man with scales and a crimson robe carefully shook the solution in his hand. Failed again. Boom. A look of disappointment flashed across the snake's eyes. Without hesitation, it smashed the test tube in its hand into pieces. Its vicious aura erupted uncontrollably. Its cold eyes spread out and examined the human soaking in the container. A fanatical look appeared on its face. I will surpass Orochimaru-sama and become the first person to transform from a snake into a dragon, and I will be completely separated from the inferior existence of humans who are bound by time. His arrogant voice was filled with endless yearning. For a creature like a dragon that only existed in myths, Kabuto's pursuit naturally reached an unprecedented level of madness and morbidity. This was his path. Everyone yearned to become a legendary immortal and roam the sky. The 5 great nations are all ready for battle. Looks like it's time for me to make my move. Just as he was about to leave, a strange figure appeared out of thin air in front of Orochimaru. "It's you." Startled, the surging murderous aura calmed down. The person in front of him was dressed in black, revealing only a pitch-black face. His empty eyes were extremely strange, just white holes. This person gave off a very contradictory feeling, or rather, he could not even be considered a human. He was completely made up of black liquid, and his true form was unknown. He did not look like a human, but he could speak human language. He was very mysterious. When he appeared, even Kabuto, who was much more powerful than the 5 Kages, did not notice him. He came and went without a trace, appearing in the most strange and incredible way, and leaving in the most incomprehensible way. He was like an omnipotent god who controlled space. Tens of thousands of spaces were controlled by him, and he came and went freely. He frowned and looked at the person in front of him in confusion. Kabuto couldn't weaken his prestige. The strong had dignity. He warned in a stern tone. "No matter who you are, this is Otogekyure. The former master was called Orochimaru, and the current master is called Kabuto. Oh, I haven't seen you for a while, and your temper has grown." That sentence is really true. As long as a creature like human reaches the ideal state of perfection one day, one of the original sins will be exposed. Now you are like this, very arrogant. The black liquid creature surged and spoke in a hoarse human language with a sneer and disdain. Its voice was calm and collected. It seemed like it had already guessed that Kabuto Orochi would turn hostile like this one day. "Don't forget who helped you become what you are today." The mysterious liquid monster's murderous intent was awe-inspiring for a moment, and his whole body exposed a domineering aura. He said coldly, "The person who fused you and Orochimaru together is me. The person who taught you Uchiha Madara's body is also me. The person who instructed you to go to the Ryuchi cave to learn Sage Mode is also me. Since I created you, I can also destroy you." His powerful and hoarse voice spread out, showing off his ability to see through the past and present. For thousands of years, he had seen countless geniuses rise and fall, and this Kabuto in front of him was just one of the ordinary ones. "You're looking for death." Hearing this, Kabuto's eyes gathered cold light, and his murderous intent burst out. He controlled the white snake head behind him to bite the mysterious man in black. The snake head's big mouth opened, revealing its ferocious fangs, and directly bit, drilling into the black robe, and entangling with the mysterious man in black. Sure enough, a useless vase. Seeing this, Kabuto curled his lips, and his eyes also changed dramatically. The fear of the mysterious man in black disappeared, and his contemptuous eyes were obviously looking at garbage not worth mentioning. Kabuto thought that this man in black who had Uchiha Madara's body was a powerful monster. It seems that he overestimated him. He was just an ordinary person among thousands of ants. "Farewell, garbage." After saying that, Kabuto showed a look of expectation, and closed his eyes in enjoyment, quietly listening to the crisp sound of a person's head being bitten by a snake. Expectation is beautiful, but reality is always cruel. After a while, the sound he was looking forward to didn't appear. Instead, he instinctively raised a big bad feeling. The ferocious snake head, like the bones of hundreds of years old, began to collapse. His eyes widened, and he looked at the collapsing snake head in disbelief. Suddenly, Kabuto was shocked, and he recalled 2 years ago, when Dustless and Orochimaru fought. Dustless also used this strange method to make Kimimara's body collapse. "I can't be eroded by him. This guy can also use this technique." Kabuto's eyes flashed with ruthlessness, and his hand turned into a sword, and he didn't hesitate to cut off the connection between the snake head and his body. "You're very smart. You know that you can't touch the yin-yang release." The liquid monster in the black robe opened its strange mouth, and grinned towards Kabuto with a heavy expression, saying mockingly, "Don't show such a frightened expression. There are many things in this world that you don't know. Right now, my fist seems to be much bigger than yours. Can we continue the topic from before?" The mysterious man laughed strangely, and that disgusting tone made people's scalp numb. and he returned Kabuto's previous words. Kabuto's face was pale. The liquid monster in front of him was stronger than Dustless, and his ability was also extremely strange. He wasn't any worse than Dustless. He clenched his fist and finally chose to put it down. He could only lower his head in front of power, and Kabuto chose to lower his head. It wasn't that Kabuto didn't dare to resist, but the mysterious man in front of him was really strange. When he suddenly appeared, he didn't even notice, and that strange ninjutsu was clearly a space-time ninjutsu that he had never seen before. He also gave Uchiha Madara's body to the new Kabuto, and made him go to the Ryuchi cave to learn senjutsu, and later ordered him to form an alliance with Dustless. As long as you follow me, don't talk about becoming a bullshit dragon. Even if you become a god, I can help you. You have also seen my ability, and I don't need to say anything more for you to understand. A harsh and hoarse voice came from the black robe. The mysterious man was making empty promises, and as long as his plan was completed, even if Kabuto really turned into a dragon, he would still be a dead dragon walking towards the end of the world. The ambition of a wolf. A mere insect wants to become a saint, and step into the realm of gods. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. And your ambition is greater than that of Dustless and Madara. You will end up the same as both of them in the future. You are just a chess piece that I casually play with. The mysterious man sneered in his heart, and was very disdainful of Kabuto. Madara and Dustless' ambition was great. After all, they had equal strength, but this Kabuto in front of him didn't even have a fart. He was just a toy, and everything he had was given to him by the mysterious man. What do you want to say? I have already formed an alliance with Dustless according to your plan. Kabuto suppressed his dissatisfaction and asked in confusion. Now that everything was on the right track, there was no need to change anything. There is no such thing as a perfect plan. The mysterious black-robed man directly denied Kabuto's request, and after a little hesitation he said, "Your alliance with Uchiha Wuchen ends here, and the person you will assist is the man who calls himself Uchiha Madara." The mysterious man's tone was cold, and the killing intent in his words seemed to be able to freeze time and space. The implication was that this chess piece of Uchiha Dustless would also reach its end. No problem. Kabuto looked at the man in the black robe with hesitation, and his eyes flashed with a strange light, and he immediately replied in a flat tone, indicating that it didn't matter who he cooperated with. Anyway, Kabuto's ultimate goal was to become a dragon, and as long as he could achieve this goal, it didn't matter who he cooperated with. Chapter 337. In the laboratory full of containers, the atmosphere was particularly oppressive. Kakaka. The sound of a mirror shattering suddenly sounded. Looking back, he saw the space behind the mysterious man crack, which was quite similar to Uchiha Obito's ability. The only strange thing was that this distorted space was as calm as water ripples. There was no so-called swallowing force, but it was like opening the door to another world, as calm as the dead water in the deep sea. Under Kabuto's surprised gaze, the man stepped in and completely disappeared, and the space healed and condensed again. What kind of sorcery is that? No wonder I couldn't sense his existence. There wasn't even chakra's fluctuation. Kabuto recovered from his shock. This kind of mysterious space ninjutsu was impossible to detect. It came and went without a trace. I can only cooperate with that masked man. Kabuto looked at the snake head that was cut off before and suddenly exerted force. The snake body that was connected to the body began to move. With a puff sound, a new snake head was spat out, and the whole body was covered in disgusting liquid. His heart was filled with deep unwillingness. Even if he was unhappy, he didn't dare to say anything, and as for fighting, he didn't have the confidence to do so. Thinking of the so-called yin-yang release from before, Kabuto looked at it with fear in his heart. Any kind of ninjutsu that can destroy anything is absolutely invincible. Humph, wait until I turn from a snake into a dragon. I will catch you as a specimen. All the resentment he suffered today turned into a strong motivation, and Kabuto vowed that one day, when he surpasses the mysterious man, he will skin him alive and study him. With the implementation of the battle plan of the 5 major countries, thousands of ninjas entered the war, gathering the young battle power of all countries around the world. The first thing they did was to establish the ninja allied forces, and the fourth raikage of the cloud-hidden village was the commander. The allied forces of the 5 major countries and other small countries were naturally a sea of people, more than 10,000 in number, and every day they sent a large number of ninjas to search for information about the Akatsuki's base. What's the situation with the Nibi's Jinchuriki? Looking at the world in the rain, Dustless faintly asked. As for the so-called allied forces, he directly ignored them. After reviving the Jubi, a few Baijidama can easily deal with them. In front of the Ten Tails, numbers would not change anything. That's right. Although they killed my doppelganger immediately, they did find traces of Yujito no Ni. White Zetsu said in a deep voice. In order to find out about Second Last, hundreds of his clones were all killed by the ninja coalition army that secretly protected him. Yujito Ni is being watched by the 5 Kages in turn. Almost every day there are 2 Kages, who won't let her go. Hearing this, Dustless only nodded slightly, and his heart relaxed. After so many years, this little fish that had been hiding in the sea had finally jumped out. Does Obito know about this? Wuchen turned his head and looked at Baiju. He suddenly asked. That brat knew about it before Lord Dustless did, and it seems that he has already taken action. Looking at Dustless's gaze, this time it was Black Zetsu's turn to speak. His voice was always hoarse, but this time it was slightly different, with a hint of gloating. Both Obito and Dustless came for the Jubi, but there is only one real Jubi Jinchuriki. The two are bound to fight fiercely for the Jubi's power. Even if you know that this is a conspiracy, can you choose to resist? Black Zetsu was extremely proud. This is the so-called open conspiracy. Even if Dustless knows that it is a conspiracy, he must participate in this competition for the Jubi's power. However, Dustless's performance disappointed Black Zetsu, and even a sentence directly made him vomit blood. The truth is, let's see his unprecedented power. As a chakra, you don't know the strength of the Jubi. Let Obito become the Jinchuriki for the time being. Looking up at the misty world, Dustless's eyes flashed with eagerness. He has been standing at the top of the pyramid for many years, and he has already experienced the feeling of loneliness at the top. Black Zetsu's mouth twitched fiercely, and his heart was very depressed. He opened his mouth, but seeing Dustless's determined and calm face, he took back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Damn it! Black Zetsu's mind was running quickly. He hoped that Dustless and Obito would fight because of the Jubi, and it would be best if one of them died. Who would have thought that Dustless would be so open-minded and give up just like that? Peace won't last long. With a long sigh, Dustless faintly said to himself. The Ninja Allied Forces has been established, containing a large number of ninjas from almost the entire world. Now the base of the Akatsuki has not been found, but it is also a matter of time. In a few days, the Rain Village will be exposed. The large number of ninjas from the 5 major countries is not a joke, especially many small countries have already turned to them. At present, only the Rain Village is wavering. I am afraid that it will not take long for the world to be completely exposed. But you actually think that I can't do it alone? It's really ridiculous. After so many years, I have put a lot of effort. The corner of his mouth lifted into a cold arc. Dustless's eyes swept over Zetsu, and his heart was unusually calm. The Geto Mazo and several other tailed beasts are in the hands of Obito, but Dustless also has a lot of cards in his hand. He has even more advantages than Obito. Utsuro is the biggest card, and Hinata, who awakened the Tensigan a few days ago, and several of them. Dustless's whole body was calm, and his temperament was indifferent and calm. Obito was too far behind. Friends, vote quickly in the next world. If you don't vote, you can leave a message in the book review section. Chapter 338. The next morning, Amigakure had a rare cloudless sky. Dustless's house was a different scene. Is this really okay? On the messy bed, Ulua was speechless and smiled bitterly. Her face was red, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at Dustless who tied her up. She couldn't wait to slap him. Last night, Wuchen had tormented her the entire night. Until now Yuluo felt weak all over. Her lower body was so numb that she couldn't feel anything. Yuluo could clearly see that Yuluo's big hands were twisting left and right, and from time to time, Dustless's mouth would let out two pleasant songs. It's not difficult to see that he was very comfortable at the moment. La la la. The soft touch from his hands made Wuchen restless. His eyes blurred involuntarily, and he hummed a strange and harsh tune. At this moment, he suddenly felt that lying in the arms full of body fragrance was the most comfortable thing. The Shinobi World War is about to begin. You're so sloppy now. The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, and Yuluo couldn't help but be speechless. The 5 major countries were watching the world covetously. As long as they find the shelter of the Akatsuki, they will give a thunderous blow. But now Dustless still has the time to enjoy the love between a man and a woman. Pa! With a crisp sound, Yuluo directly pushed away Dustless's big hands and said, "The ninjas of the 5 major countries were originally a pack of wolves and tigers, and now Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu are colluding together. But you have been abandoned by the whole world, Dustless." Yuluo reminded in a serious tone. The current situation can be described as terrible. Looking at the whole world, whether it is Obito or the ninja allied forces, they are the enemies that Dustless must get rid of. Hee. Hearing this, Wuchen just smiled wretchedly. When he was about to reach his hand into that wonderful body again, Yuluo mercilessly slapped away his mischievous big hand. "You don't know how to have fun." Grumpily glaring at Yuluo, Wuchen sneered. "Against the whole world? You really think too highly of those people. Besides, I'm not alone. At the very least, I have all of you on my side," Dustless said seriously. Although there were only a few people around him, they were all sincere to him. Hanrin, Cheyenne, Hinata, and Yurakura were all sincere to him. In addition, Dustless also has the corpses of the previous Hokage, as well as the hidden chess piece Mei. The power gathered in the dark can definitely change the outcome of the war. The so-called ninja allied forces are nothing more than shrimp soldiers and crab generals. There are very few of them that can be of great use. If the 5 Kage die, their hearts will also collapse. The only one worthy of attention is Uchiha Madara. Talking about the ninja coalition, Dustless shook his head. These people don't need to be dealt with by him. They can be dealt with by Obito's White Zetsu army. The only people who can attract his attention are Uchiha Madara and Kagaya. As for the person who Kagaya was afraid of, it shouldn't be so coincidental. Frowning deeply, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of uneasiness. The enemy that Otsutsuki Kagaya was afraid of, his strength can be imagined. But later, after Otsutsuki Kagaya was sealed, her enemy also disappeared as if he had never appeared and disappeared between heaven and earth forever. Especially according to Dustless's memory of Morio in the past, whether it is Kagaya or her enemy, it seems that they don't belong to the world in front of them. Like Dustless, Kagaya and her enemy are also invaders. Maybe it is not impossible for them to return to their original world. Is there really such a terrible existence, Dustless? Yuluo's tone was low, and her beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. Kagaya was the ancestor of Chakra, the god of creation through and through. It was not difficult to imagine how terrifying the enemy she was facing would be. Let nature take its course, don't worry. There will always be someone stronger. There is only motivation when there is oppression. Dustless smiled in relief and took Yuluo's jade-like hands into his arms to play with. He said softly, "Even if they are the so-called gods, they are nothing more than that. They just gained their fame by deceiving the world. Before eating the fruit of the divine tree, Huiji is just an ordinary person." "You can say that." Glaring at Dustless, Yuluo took back her hand and said discontentedly, "It would be best if you can change your greedy appearance. Otherwise, you will definitely not see the sun tomorrow." "It's because I'm afraid that I won't be able to see tomorrow's sun, so we have to speed up the things we like to do. Continue." Wuchen was thick-skinned. He squinted his eyes and examined Yuluo's beautiful body. Like a tiger in a pack of wolves, he directly rushed over. Unexpectedly, Yuluo was prepared in advance and easily avoided Dustless's attack. "Obito is destined to be buried with us. Uchiha Madara, Black Zetsu, and Obito are the ones who want to be eliminated the most. He is just blinded by hatred. After knowing that the cause and effect of everything is me, he will naturally jump to the previous camp. Pursing his lips, Dustless Elegance was gradually worn out by Yuluo. He said seriously, therefore he is destined to be the first person to be eliminated. In the end, he was originally a chess piece. At the beginning, Uchiha Madara and Dustless cooperated because they were afraid that Dustless would do it alone, so he arranged Obito as a chess piece to monitor Dustless while completing his own plan. Obito's existence itself was to monitor Dustless, and there was not much value in using him. That's right. Yuluo nodded. Obito actually didn't have much ability. Without the Jubi and Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan, his strength could only be regarded as ordinary. Even if he was now facing Dustless, there was still a gap between the strength of the two sides. Chapter 339. The ninja allied forces were quickly formed, and in a very short time, they were divided into several teams, and each team was led by a ninja from each village. Originally, Konoha's ninja should be led by Kakashi, but he was already killed by Dustless. Now Konoha's ninja could only send Guy to lead the ninja. In less than a few hours after Guy took office, Tsunade, as the chief of staff of the ninja allied forces, gave him a dangerous and deadly task. To some extent, it's a death sentence. In a heavy and depressing office. Creak! As the door was gently pushed open, a middle-aged man wearing a green coat with a watermelon hair came into sight. His eyes were shining like stars, giving people a feeling of vitality. But deep in the corner of his eyes, there was sadness. Five-sama. The loneliness and desolation were swept away. Madogai bowed to the 5 Kages. His voice was as loud and clear as a bell, sonorous and powerful. The 5 Kages are not ordinary people. Although Guy hid it perfectly, he couldn't hide it from the eyes of these old foxes. Uchiha Dustless is a scourge to the whole world. Inoki sighed, and his tone was filled with endless melancholy. During the Third World War, he realized that Dustless was going to be a rising superstar in the future, and he wanted to urge the Cloud to kill Dustless together. But he didn't expect to be rejected by the other party, and even the Third Reikage humiliated the Rock Village. It's all because of that stubborn guy. If he had listened to my advice at the beginning, the problem would have been eliminated, and there would be no need to do this. Speaking of the Reikage, Inoki couldn't help but complain. If he had agreed to his plan, Dustless and Konoha's ninja village would have been wiped off the map. Tsuchikage-sama, my father is dead. Please don't kill him. And the murderer who plotted against my father is you. Please respect yourself. Inoki's words immediately caused Yondaime Reikage to glare at him, and his messy golden hair fluttered in the wind. If it weren't for the occasion in front of him, he wouldn't mind teaching Inoki a lesson, and let this arrogant old man know how to behave. You too, the enemy is hiding in the dark. If we fight first, the destruction of the world will be near. Instead of casualties, it's better to give the world to them directly. As the chief of staff of the allied forces, Tsunade reminded them, seeing this situation, they were confused about the future. Although the 5 major countries temporarily put aside their personal grievances, some deep contradictions can't be forgotten. For example, the current situation. The enemy suddenly became allies. Not many people can adapt in a short time. Hearing this, Yondaime Reikage and Inoki were silent, knowing that this was not the time to bicker. There's not much time. I'll get straight to the point, Guy. Taking a deep breath, Tsunade's eyes fell on Guy, and said solemnly, the current situation looks very bad. Although we have all the advantages, the enemy is more terrible than us. It's a shark hidden in the deep sea. No one knows when the Akatsuki will attack. The power of the 5 major countries is terrifying, enough to destroy any country in the shinobi world. But in the face of the mysterious Akatsuki, they really don't have confidence. Especially compared to the hidden Akatsuki, the 5 major countries are exposed targets. The enemy can launch a sneak attack at any time, catching them off guard. Any task given by Hokage-sama will be completed without hesitation. Guy naturally knew the seriousness of the problem, and said to Tsunade resolutely. Tsunade nodded with satisfaction. and pointed to the map formed by the sand table, marked with the geographical location and details of various countries. Some countries haven't joined the ninja coalition yet. The Akatsuki's traders are likely to be hiding in these countries. Her eyes suddenly fell on the country marked by the blue flag. Tsunade pointed at it and said suspiciously, "The countries that haven't joined the ninja coalition forces have sent spies to infiltrate them. Only the Rain Village, the last ninja village, hasn't moved. It's very likely that the Akatsuki's base is in this village." Hearing this, Guy's eyes flashed with anger, and he immediately guessed Tsunade's intention and said solemnly, "Hokage-sama wants me to sneak into the Rain Village to investigate. This is not a problem. The hatred of Kakashi and Jiraiya-sama will be avenged by the blue beasts of Konoha. It seems that there are people in the world who are not afraid of death, daring to lurk in the Rain Village alone." When Mike Guy set off, the information had already been passed to the hands of Dustless. The source of the news was naturally Terumi, Mei, who was in the Chow camp. A wise man submits to circumstances. Dustless didn't think that the traitor was shameful. Instead, he thought that Terumi Mei was saving the Mist Village. "Let me deal with him." Hearing that the enemy was coming, Yuluo frowned and recommended herself. Wuchen shook his head. "This Mato guy is naturally not an ordinary person. Maybe he will suffer a double loss. Mato guy's fighting power is close to that of Madara. He can even defeat him in a short time. Even if it's just a flash in the pan, this berserk beast can't be underestimated. It's more reliable for me to do it myself. He's not an ordinary person, and he can't be estimated by common sense." After a long silence, Dustless decided to destroy Konoha's blue beast by himself. Although the other party is just an ordinary person, if he is angered, he will erupt with strength beyond the six paths. Seeing Dustless's action, Yuluo frowned, and her eyes flashed with doubts, but she still closed her mouth. Chapter 340. Otsutsuki Haguro stared at Dustless. The other party is just a jonin, but Dustless wants to do it himself, whether it's reasonable or otherwise. "You don't understand, that guy is the best object to test my strength." Dustless smiled mysteriously, and his heart that had been cold for many years was strangely surging. Most of his enemies over the years were small actors, and only the explosive Mato guy was the real protagonist. Dustless also wants to fight with the strong, instead of using the glinting fruit's ability to exhaust the other party. Taking a step back, even if the elemental transformation is shameless, he has to wait until he can't beat the enemy to launch the glinting fruit's ability. The best test object? Haguro was confused. Although he couldn't see what was special about Mato guy, Dustless's face was full of fanaticism. If it was an ordinary thing, it wouldn't arouse his interest at all. The sky was drizzling, gloomy and depressing, and there seemed to be some fierce beast hidden in the depths of the clouds, stirring the wind and clouds unscrupulously. In the wind and rain, a quiet figure stood for a long time, wearing black clothes and a bamboo hat. The world in the rain was particularly lonely, isolated from the world. Looking up, within a few kilometers, there were no birds and beasts, and there was no human habitation, like a deserted island purgatory. According to the route sent by Terumi Mei, there is no doubt here. But after so long, did she come? The corner of Wu Chen's mouth stopped moving. Under the sage mode, Wu Chen suddenly perceived a nimble figure. The figure's movements were simple and skillful. Every move and jump seemed to be made by nature. Even Wu Chen could not compare with the figure who had used the body technique to the limit. Worthy of Konoha's gray wolf beast. Dustless couldn't help but nod in admiration, and his face was full of admiration. Looking at the whole world, only Mato guy and his son can practice taijutsu to this level. It's a pity. The regret in his eyes flashed away and was replaced by indifference, and the vast chakra in his body began to surge. And because the golden chakra was too rich, Dustless's whole body was covered with a golden coat. In the wind and rain, it turned into a beautiful golden color. He's here. His pupils suddenly opened and shot out a cold light. He raised his head and saw a strong figure braving the wind and rain coming straight at him. Due to his terrifying speed, there were still some figures behind him that had yet to disperse. This guy. Fortunately, he doesn't know ninjutsu. Dustless's face sank. His calm heart rippled. If this kind of speed was combined with the ever-changing ninjutsu, it would be invincible. While Dustless was lost in his thoughts, Might Guy had already appeared a dozen meters away. He stared coldly at Dustless, his killing intent soaring. Such heavy rain. Dustless's slightly raised smile froze. Only then did he realize that it was only drizzling. His eyes flashed with embarrassment, but he was also a person who had experienced many storms and waves, so he quickly calmed down. In short, I have been waiting for you for a long time. Why do you look like you can't wait to tear me to pieces? Dustless's counterattack was a strong chakra fluctuation and a burst of earth. It was not difficult to see that Might Guy had opened the Hashimen Tanku, 7th Gate of Wonder, open. The surface of his body was covered with blue steam, and the intense fluctuations that erupted from his body directly shattered the ground beneath his feet. Then he shot out like a cannonball. Clenching his hand into a fist and rolling up a violent tornado, Might Guy rushed straight at Dustless. Bang! Boom boom boom. The surrounding ground collapsed once again, and the scattered shockwaves turned into a powerful shockwave, covering an area that was a complete mess. However, Wu Chun, who was attacked head-on, was calm and collected. There was no change in his mood at all. He raised his palm and easily caught the heavy fist. Why are you showing such a surprised expression? This should not be the limit of the Hashimen Tanku. Your strength is at most a stalemate with me. It is impossible to kill me. Looking at Might Guy, who was in disbelief, Dustless said without any ripples. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water, and there was a faint anger. He suddenly found that he was underestimated. Seeing that his attack was easily blocked, Might Guy's eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. What about this daytime tiger? As Might Guy's voice fell, a giant white striped tiger fell from the sky, and its sawtooth was full of fangs and biting towards Dustless. Its majestic body was even comparable to the complete Kinsusanu. After all, Might Guy used this technique to instantly kill Uchiha Madara's mature Kinsusanu. Its power was self-evident. I carefully explained to you that just opening the 7th gate can't hurt me. As a blue beast, you don't understand human language. It seems that I talk too much nonsense. Looking up and glancing at the white tiger, Dustless shrugged and sighed, and lazily said, In that case, I can only rely on brute force to open the 8th gate. A ripple appeared in his pitch-black pupils. Soon after, they twisted rapidly. The dark blue left eye was directly exposed to the sky. This fat cat looks good, but it's useless. It's just a joke to me. With a contemptuous look, Dustless gently waved his hands forward, and a strong chakra wave directly formed and turned into a tornado. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. A tornado hundreds of meters long rose from the ground, and the high-speed rotating wave swallowed the flowing air and strengthened itself. It was more ferocious and terrifying than the white-striped tiger. Poochie. The white tiger screamed and its huge body burst. At the moment when the two collided, the stronger tornado directly killed it, twisting it into countless pieces and completely disappearing from the world. Chapter 341. This guy, Maitre Guy's face was gloomy. Day Tiger was the strongest move after activating the Gate of Wonder, and Dustless actually countered it so easily, especially those mysterious dark blue eyes. It gave him an untouchable feeling. The difference between you and me in this state is too great. A gust of cold wind blew past, blowing Dustless's hair up high. Dustless said quietly. His calm demeanor made Maitre Guy's heart fall to the bottom. He couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. Just like what Dustless said, the difference between them was too great. They were not on the same level at all. If that's the case, then burn, youth. The haze was swept away. Maitre Guy roared angrily. The chakra in his body began to go berserk, and a rapidly pressuring hurricane blew out from his body. The terrifying air wave could even blow away the mountains. Even someone as strong as Dustless felt a fatal pressure. Chakra is rushing towards the heart. Dustless under the reincarnation, I could clearly see the direction of the chakra in Maitre Guy's body. A small part of the chakra was rushing towards the heart quickly. This is, squinting his eyes slightly, Dustless tensed up and secretly became vigilant. In the dark, he actually felt like he was being stared at by a prehistoric beast. Under Dustless's astonished gaze, the blue steam burning on Guy's body turned into dark red blood steam. Boom boom boom. Ka ka ka. Maitre Guy. Or at this moment, Eight-Gate Guy's body exploded with dark red steam that turned into a solid attack. His entire person was like a god of destruction that walked out from ancient times. The gas floating all over his body tore the air, and directly evaporated it into nothingness. What was even more terrifying was that Eight-Gate Guy's body had turned blood red at this moment. His hair was the same, and so were his eyebrows. Gulp. Even with Dustless's temperament, facing Eight-Gate Guy in this state, he also felt a sense of awe. In this state, he had completely surpassed the level of a human. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Although he was sure that the final winner was himself, Dustless didn't dare to be careless. After all, this was the strongest Hashiman Tanku, a terrifying ninjutsu that once crushed Madara. It was worthy of Dustless's attention. Without thinking, Dustless directly floated into the sky, and gathered light in his palm. Have you opened the gate of death of the 8 inner hidden gates? Just a candle in the wind. Yasakani no Magatama. Wu Chen's face turned cold. The light in his palm scattered in all directions. The dark night sky was instantly filled with light. Numerous light bullets poured down like a rainstorm. The boundless energy tide almost annihilated the triumphant 8 gates. Under the overflowing radiance, those below the 8 gates of triumph were not worth mentioning. Guys. Guy said. Guy and guys. And guys. Guys. Of the Guy gate. And Spotty's guy. However, suddenly Ba Menkai said passionately, and I'm definitely not as simple as withering away. After blooming my youth, I turned into nourishment to nourish the earth. Everything in the world will be devoured by me, Uchiha Dustless, so why are you still nourishing yourself? Before Ba Menkai could finish, Dustless rudely interrupted his crazy speech. This kind of boring declaration was too laughable, and he was overestimating himself. The earth was so vast, and it was foolish to think that he could nourish it with the body of a human. Then, before you devour this land, I'll bury you with my youth. Looking fearlessly at the light bullets, Ba Menkai's skin turned dark. Instead of retreating, he charged forward and gathered all his strength at the tip of his feet. Like a cannonball, it shot straight towards the boundless light balls. From the looks of it, it seemed to have completely ignored the Yasakani no Magatama that filled the sky. What a reckless thing, so arrogant. I want to see how miserable it will be when you are beaten into a sieve. Dustless's face suddenly collapsed. He has always been the one who despises others, but now Ba Menkai is treating the Yasakani no Magatama like air. How can he not be angry? Boom. 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 Ba Menkai, who rose from the ground, was burning with crimson steam. Any matter that came in contact with him was forcibly distorted, and every light bullet that came in contact with him would automatically detour and slip away from him. What kind of joke is this? This guy. Seeing this, Dustless's face changed dramatically, and for the first time in his life, he was shocked. Looking at Ba Menkai, who was burning with crimson steam, the corners of his mouth twitched fiercely, and a touch of disbelief flashed in his heart. He can distort time and space with speed alone. It's not that Ba Menkai ignored the Yasakani no Magatama, but that the space around Ba Menkai was completely distorted, and the trajectory of the Yasakani no Magatama was also forcibly changed, and it couldn't touch Ba Menkai's body. This kind of shocking feeling is really exciting. Staring at Ba Menkai, who was stepping on the air as if he was facing a formidable enemy, Wu Chen was not afraid. Instead, he smiled. The sinister and evil smile at the corner of his mouth was particularly strange. His left eye began to ripple, and the mysterious reincarnation Sharingan was exposed, and the mysterious 9 tomo hung on it, and a faint ripple appeared. The focus of his sight was naturally on Ba Menkai's body. Want to get close to me? It's not that easy. Looking at Ba Menkai, who was whistling towards him calmly, Dustless disdainfully snorted. He would not wait for death with his bare hands. That was not his style. Clasping his hands together, a mysterious black sphere was formed and slowly floated into the sky. You're just a mere beast. Go back to the cage and stay there obediently. Chibaku Tensei. Chapter 342. Chibaku Tensei was the strongest sealing technique of the Rinnegan. There was no doubt that it was powerful. Legend had it that the Sage of the Six Paths used this technique to create the moon. Since he could create something as big as the moon, sealing Hashiman Kai was naturally not a problem. At least Dustless thought so. Hurry up and get in. With a roar, the surface of the black sphere floating in the sky suddenly flashed with golden brilliance. Ripples splashed in the void, and a strong and irresistible gravitational force surged out from the black sphere, covering a boundless area. Ka ka ka. The sound of the ground collapsing and cracking could be heard. Like shredded paper, the huge rocks began to float upwards, towards the center of the gravitational force, towards the area where the black sphere was. Hashiman Kai was no exception. He was swallowed by the gravitational force of the black sphere, and his whole body began to float up. How can my youth be lost to this kind of thing? Covered in red steam, Hashiman Kai was like a demon god. The black eyeballs in the frame were also replaced by chaotic white eyes, full of a strong destructive power. Burn, my youth. Ao ao. Woo woo. The monstrous roar resounded through the sky. Like a thunderbolt, everything around was forbidden, and the dark red steam covering Hashiman Kai's body burned more vigorously. Even the roar of a mythological beast could be heard. Dustless was in a trance. Under Dustless's stunned gaze, Hashiman Kai directly ignored the black sphere above his head. The so-called Chibaku Tensei did not exist in front of him. Dustless's eyes twitched. Didn't you hear me tell you to get in? Clapping his hands together, Dustless's left eye was bloodshot. Chakra was like a vast and boundless ocean, and the gravitational force of the black sphere increased by dozens of times in an instant. The ground within a radius of dozens of kilometers all collapsed, and floated towards the sphere floating in the sky at an extremely fast speed. Caught off guard, he also directly swallowed it. After all, the gravitational force increased by dozens of times in an instant. He did not expect it, and his whole body was directly buried. Ka ka ka. The boundless amount of stones floated into the sky, and the surface area of the huge sphere continued to expand. These stones were precious nutrients that increased its volume. After a few breaths of time, this unprecedented calamity finally came to an end, and only then did the earth proudly linger on at death's door. A pitch-black shadow covered the horizon, and the sun couldn't be seen. Everything in the world was gloomy, as if it was the end of the world. The light of dawn would never shine here. Looking up, he saw a giant sphere floating in the void. He had no idea how big it was, but the world in his eyes was filled with this meteorite, which explained everything. Even a god would not be able to escape from such a strong cage. The Chibaku Tensei that I cast is no ordinary Chibaku Tensei. Compared to the fallen Nagato, its power is more than several times stronger. The corner of Dustless's mouth raised slightly, showing a confident smile. Eye power and chakra content were absolutely everything, and naturally, it also determined the gap between him and Uzumaki Nagato. The cage that was tailor-made for you is completely over. Wu Chen's words came to an abrupt halt as a peerlessly tyrannical energy fluctuation came over. His smile also quietly froze and stiffened. In the void, the enormous meteorite that almost filled the sky emitted a buzzing sound of vibration. Looking up at the meteorite in the void, Dustless's eyes widened, and he choked unnaturally. What kind of power is needed to make it sway like this? Following Dustless's line of sight, he saw the meteorite floating in the void was strangely swaying from side to side. The huge and almost endless meteorite was more than 100 tons. Such a shocking thing was simply unheard of. Relying purely on brute force to make it sway like a fallen leaf, Dustless asked himself if he could do it. Sure enough, it's not a monster that can be dealt with by Chibaku Tensei. Dustless's face not only did not show any fear, but instead showed a morbid excitement. His eyes were fiery as he looked at Chibaku Tensei, and his bright eyes seemed to be able to see Hashiman Kai inside the meteorite. Although he could directly use the elemental transformation to exhaust Hashiman Kai, that was in a helpless situation. Dustless did not think that he would be beaten by Hashiman Kai without any means to fight back. If I know the Hashiman Tonku, this is not realistic. A light flashed in his mind, and Dustless's eyes lit up. The advantage of the Hashiman Tonku was obvious, and it could be called invincible. However, after just a few breaths of time, he decisively shook his head. The Hashiman Tonku's strict requirements on the body had reached an unprecedented level. Every time a gate was opened, the physical quality of the body would double, and the body's self-harm would also increase. Hashiman Kai was able to open the last gate of the Hashiman Tonku, the gate of death. This was also the reason why he persevered day after day, year after year. Dustless did not have the time to spend decades training his body. Boom, boom, boom. With a loud sound, the meteorite floating in the sky fiercely trembled, splashing up a lot of dust. Many large stones also fell down, and the pure force of the collision tore them apart. A dark hole suddenly appeared on the previously intact meteorite. Looking carefully, there was a faint crimson flame flickering in the hole. Although it was only a little light, it gave people a feeling of crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. And the meteorite was easily destroyed. As time passed, the crimson light became more and more obvious, and one could clearly see a figure covered in steam. It was Hashiman Kai who crushed Chibaku Tensei. This guy. Dustless's face was very ugly. Chibaku Tensei was so easily crushed by brute force. It was indeed beyond his expectations. Just as he was about to attack again, a crimson monster came biting at him. Chapter 343. The unknown red creature was ferocious. It spat out heat waves like a dragon's breath, and its huge body was surrounded by ripples. Its exposed fangs were gleaming with a cold light. If it moved its mouth slightly, even a mountain would crumble in an instant. This should be Day Tiger. After hesitating for a while, the confusion in his eyes turned into understanding. Dustless said with certainty. Although there was a difference in color and power, the appearance of this tiger did not change much. He could use Day Tiger after activating Gate of Wonder. Now that he had activated Gate of Death, there was no reason why he could not use it. But it doesn't look like a Day Tiger. In short, no matter what kind of monster you are, it's my turn to fight back. Dustless looked cautiously at the approaching crimson monster. His face was filled with hostility. The pupil power in his eye of reincarnation began to go berserk, and a special chakra emerged from his right eye. Dustless's emerald coat was wrapped around his body. His form had undergone a drastic change, and a few green prayer beads were floating behind him. With a gentle wave of his arm, the green prayer beads behind him floated in front of him. The mysterious sphere was pulsating with a mysterious luster. Dustless's mind moved slightly, and the sphere turned into a liquid state. The golden light gathered in his palm. Disappear along with your boring beastly dreams. Dustless lifted his eyelids and looked at the approaching crimson beast expressionlessly. The brilliance in his palm swept out, and in the blink of an eye, the golden light expanded infinitely and extended to a few thousand meters. It was like a golden wave sweeping out. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. The destructive light connected the north and south, and the area covered was boundless. Everything along the way was sliced apart. Not to mention resisting, they did not even have the ability to retaliate. The light passed through the crimson beast's body, and the smooth burnt wound was clearly visible. The mighty and huge body was instantly killed. That's all. The light beam in his hand dissipated. Wuxia talked to himself casually and floated in the sky motionlessly. He was extremely frivolous and casual. Even Ba Menkai was stunned for a while. For a moment, Ba Menkai also fell silent. He lowered his head and stopped his fierce attacks. His eyes flashed with a strange light, as if he was thinking of a way to deal with Dustless. Is it really okay for you to waste your time like this? This is a technique that burns one's life. When this gorgeous outer layer is burned away, I'm afraid I won't even need to do anything. You'll die. Dustless could clearly see the situation inside Bai Menkai's body. He could clearly see that the chakra on his meridians was slowly fading away, especially at his heart. The light was even dimmer, as if it could be extinguished at any time. Now that Bai Menkai was burning his life force, wasting time would only accelerate the loss of his life force. Dustless could clearly see that some of the bones in his body had already begun to crack. If that's the case, after thinking hard, Bai Menkai found that there was no way to deal with Dustless. In the face of absolute power, there was no conspiracy that could defeat Dustless. Instead of thinking hard, it was better to fight Dustless. This method was more effective and direct. Boom, boom, boom. Bai Menkai stepped on the air, and his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Dustless out of thin air, as if he used a space ninjutsu. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched towards Dustless's face. Evening Elephant. A white iron fist with silver light was punched out from Bai Menkai's hand. It turned into a solid fist like an air cannon, and the target was naturally Dustless. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, Dustless's body flew out upside down, smashing the mountain in the distance into pieces, and a huge crater on the ground was clearly visible. After being punched so hard, the tailed beast would definitely die. This guy? What's the meaning of his action? Bai Menkai narrowed his eyes, and his brain was spinning rapidly. Dustless was immune to physical attacks, but now he chose to take his attack head-on. This action really puzzled him. Ah, what a ferocious fist. But it's really disappointing. To think that I thought you could make me go all out just once. Wuxia stood up and slightly moved his numb arms. At the critical moment just now, he crossed his arms to block the bombardment of Bai Menkai without any fear, and avoided the vital parts of his body. Although Dustless was sent flying by Bai Menkai's attack, he also tested Bai Menkai's strength. If it was limited to this, he didn't mind giving up his advantage to fight Bai Menkai head-on. Staring at Bai Menkai with burning eyes, Dustless's eyes flashed with a threatening chill. That was the expression of a hunter when he saw a beast struggling for its life. This guy is really terrifying. To be able to take the attack of Sunset Elephant, and still be so lively, cough cough. While his heart was filled with thoughts, his lungs suddenly rolled, and red blood uncontrollably burst out of his mouth. Bai Menkai's vision obviously dimmed a lot, and he was gasping for breath, giving people the feeling of the sunset. Suddenly, a cold wind blew, and Bai Menkai's body seemed to be dancing with the wind, unable to get rid of it. Even if I die, I will take him with me. Bai Menkai's confused eyes recovered, and the hesitation disappeared in an instant. The piercing pain spread throughout his body, but it also couldn't stop Bai Menkai's lofty spirit. The blood vapor that had previously shown signs of being completely extinguished was actually burning vigorously once again. The density was even denser than before, almost solidifying. Could it be that he can still be strengthened? The corner of Dustless's mouth fiercely twitched, and he cursed in his heart. This Bai Men hidden gate was too strange. It could be strengthened without limit. But soon, the disbelief disappeared. Dustless clearly noticed that Bai Menkai's body was already scorched black, and the chakra in his heart was also gradually extinguishing. Chapter 344. Dustless in the Tensigen mode and the 9 Tomo Rinnegan mode. The situation inside Ikumenkai's body couldn't be hidden. Everything was clearly exposed to his eyes. It's almost the end. Next is the craziest period of the beast's counterattack. No matter when, the beast's dying struggle is the most dangerous and fatal. In the face of the threat of death, they will erupt with far more terrifying combat power than usual. Especially Ikumenkai. Knowing that he has no hope of getting a new life, he will inevitably erupt with more ferocious combat power. This is a cruel fight with his life on the line. It's coming. Ikumenkai's pupils suddenly shrank. He looked directly at the golden light in front of him with full concentration, and clenched his iron fists tightly, courting death. Ikumenkai sneered again and again. The fact that light can't be turned is now known to the whole world. So Dustless's approach is indeed courting death. At least Ikumenkai thought so. If Dustless doesn't use elemental attacks to ignore physical attacks, he has absolute confidence to suppress him. Evening Elephant. Yakumen Kai clenched his iron fists that were several times larger than Tongling's. Yakumen Kai didn't move, but when he moved, a solid air cannon blasted out from his black iron fists. It whizzed towards Dustless in a straight trajectory. Evening Elephant. Evening Elephant. In his mind, he seemed to recall Dustless's unscathed appearance after being hit by the Evening Elephant head-on. Yakumen Kai suppressed the stinging pain in his body, and still blasted out 2 fierce astral winds. The 8 inner hidden gates required one to burn one's own life. Every second was precious. A total of 3 air cannons were hurtling toward him. The power they contained was extremely terrifying, and the space they passed through began to twist and distort. The strongest taijutsu is really not for show. Among the opponents I have fought in the past, the title of the strongest does not belong to Uchiha Sasuke, nor does it belong to Uchiha Obito. I am willing to admit that you are the strongest. Dustless's momentum rose to the limit, and for the first time in his life, he burst out with all his strength, facing Yakumen Kai in his peak state. Ayo. Hum hum hum. The boundless chakra was like a prehistoric monster that had awakened. The 8-gate Kai seemed to have heard the sigh of the vicissitudes of life from ancient times. The entire void started to hum as it was corroded and decayed. In the frame of the Rinnegan Sharingan, there are 9 black tomo patterns hanging on it, and along with the violent chakra fluctuations, they spread out like water ripples. Mahalaya. Bang! Above the void, an unstoppable repulsive force exploded, and the area of effect was unprecedentedly large. The 3 extraordinarily powerful squalls were directly swallowed up by the airwaves. TK. I only destroyed 2 of them? Dustless frowned slightly. The previous 2 air cannons had already been swallowed up, and had completely disappeared into the horizon. However, there were still some air cannons that had slipped through the net, and were whistling towards Dustless. However, due to the previous airwave attack, the powerful air cannon had lost its luster and had obviously dimmed. It was also weakened by the sudden attack of a powerful move like Mahabharata. Stop here. With a chuckle, Dustless's body glowed with light, and when he got close to the air cannon, his body condensed into a solid form, and his leg flashed with a dazzling luster, and he kicked out mercilessly. Lightspeed kick. Boom. The boundless sky suddenly exploded. The 2 tyrannical forces were evenly matched, and a strong impact broke out. The entire void trembled fiercely, and there were some faint traces of distortion. However, it was obvious that the golden luster was slightly better. The blazing ripples spread out and spread to every inch of the sky. The dazzling luster swallowed the white light, and calmness was restored. It ended with Hachiman Kai's defeat. This guy actually blocked the continuous attacks of Evening Elephant. Do I really have to use that? Taking a deep breath, Hachiman Kai felt that his life was accelerating, and the hesitation in his eyes disappeared. His white eyes were full of awe-inspiring color, and his whole body was exuding the madness of a desperate fight. Idiot. Do you think you still have a chance? The time for you to dance is over. A ghostly voice suddenly sounded behind him, accompanied by a strong flash of light. Hachiman Kai suddenly froze, and when he was about to run away, it was already too late. The dazzling golden light had already covered him. Konoha's blue beast. Have you ever been hit by the speed of light? This kind of ecstasy is unforgettable. And now it's time to carefully savor this rare enjoyment. Lightspeed kick. Boom. In the face of the heaven-defying speed of light, no creature can escape. Hachiman Kai, who was locked by Dustless, was hit by the impact of the lightspeed kick, and he was kicked down from the sky by Dustless. Boom boom boom. Endless smoke and dust rose up from the devastated ground, and it exploded once again. In the deep pit, one could clearly see Ba Men Kai, whose body was almost completely charred. He had lost all of his chi and blood, and his breathing was negligible. What a perverted physique. With such a heavy degree of injury, his whole body is unrecognizable, but it seems that he can still struggle at death's door. Dustless's body in the sky slowly landed on the ground, and he wiped the sweat off his forehead. After the battle, he was also exhausted, whether it was his body, mind or body. Is this the end? I'll let you fend for yourself. Turning around resolutely, Hachiman Kai was already a candle in the wind. Even if he didn't do anything, in the end he would die. The gate of death of the Hachiman Tonku had already burned his everything, and the current Kai was just an empty shell. Chapter 345. Spiritual willpower is a very mysterious thing. For example, Uzumaki Naruto always has a kind of magical power. In fact, it's not just him. Many people in Konoha have this kind of power to break out of the cocoon and be reborn in despair. Right now, Yamaten Kai also has this kind of mysterious power. Maybe his body has completely disappeared. What supports him in this bitter battle is his soul. It's really boring. Can't you just quietly wait for death to come? At this moment, you want to drag me to hell with you. How come everyone has this kind of unrealistic idea? To drag me to hell? Go to hell. Looking indifferently at the void in front of him, Wuchen suddenly said as if it was a fantasy. Boom boom boom. Ow ow ow. Not long after Dustless's voice fell, chakra fluctuations suddenly came from behind him, and a loud sound similar to the roar of a mythological beast could be heard. Looking back leisurely, what came into his eyes was a red mythological beast with a ferocious appearance. Although this blood-colored beast god formed by chakra was extremely strange, it had huge golden eyes, and it was covered with sharp and strong scales. It looked like a nondescript monster. Even so, Dustless decided to treat it as a mythological beast. The monster full of scales was extremely terrifying, and the oppressive aura it exuded was suffocating, and the space around it was faintly distorted. This is not a strength that any beast can have. Only a mythological beast can have this kind of strength. At this moment, Konoha's blue mythological beast has stepped into the level of transcendence. The last song. Well, let me see what kind of taijutsu can defeat Uchiha Madara. Let me see what kind of shocking power it is. The shock in his eyes turned into fanaticism. Feeling the overbearing aura of the Crimson Beast, Dustless was also excited for a while. This ugly beast made him feel a little threatened. Humans are this kind of magical animals. When they are under the threat of death, they often break out more powerful strength, and everyone has this kind of potential in their body. In the red mythological beast formed by chakra, Yamaten Kai struggled to support his burnt body. He was exhausted, and he could barely feel his breathing. What supported him to stand up was completely his will. Seeing this scene, Wuchen also couldn't help but be in awe. He admired this genius who trained hard to become a god. Faint ripples splashed in his indifferent heart, and he had a little more respect for him. Madokai is different from other ninjas. It can even be said that he was accompanied by endless ridicule in his childhood. After all, the future of a taijutsu-type ninja is self-evident. With his own hard training, Dustless to reach the level of a god today, he can't be compared to Kai. Whether you can hear my voice or not, there is something I have to tell you. Looking straight at the muddle-headed Yamaten Kai, Dustless said in a deep voice. Your current state, compared to the Sage of Six Paths in the past, you have obtained the power to be on par with him. Even if it is just a flash in the pan. If it wasn't because of our different standpoints, I don't mind becoming friends with you, which is the so-called fetters. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. Dustless was not lying. He had respect for a genius like Yamaten Kai who trained hard. Bring it on. I will use my peak strength to fight you. Raising his right hand, Dustless's palm suddenly drilled out a black liquid. It compressed into a shape, and in just a few breaths, it formed a black staff. The shape was the same as the staff of the Sage of Six Paths. Ao. Seeing Dustless looking at him with a strong desire to fight, the angry crimson mythological beast seemed to be provoked by Dustless. It bared its teeth and roared angrily. The scorching heat wave that it spat out instantly evaporated the surrounding space. So strong. Dustless's pupils shrunk. The heat wave that contained the intention to kill brushed past his body. He had goosebumps all over his body. Since he was born, this was the first time he felt a sense of fear that came from the depths of his soul. This kind of silent oppression belonged to the innate stage. Bam bam bam. In the blink of an eye, the stable ground was like a jumping bed. jumping nonstop. It was extremely frightening. When he looked up, he saw the crimson-red divine beast charging through brambles and thorns. The void along the way was forcefully collapsed by her. How can such a huge creature be so fast? Dustless's eyes widened. He was shocked. Without any hesitation, he held the Sage of Six Paths staff in front of him, blocking the impact that was coming towards him. Even if it was just a casual wave of air, it had the dominance of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Looking at the current amount of chakra, Dustless, who had not used chakra, was not even worth mentioning. It was as insignificant as duckweed in the sea. Night Kai. Accompanied by a roar, the crimson ferocious monster shone brightly. Its speed increased by 10 times in an instant. It was almost in front of Dustless at the speed of light. Dustless did not even have time to react. He took the direct attack of Night Kai head-on. Boom, boom, boom. The ground was filled with smoke and dust. It was as if there was a super earthquake with a magnitude of more than 10. The entire ground shook violently, and a figure was thrown out violently, smashing a few mountains into pieces. On the ground, there was a trench that was a few hundred meters long. It was clearly visible. The remaining energy wave on it was chilling. I'm so sorry, although Night Kai is strong, it has not reached the level where it can kill me. After a while, a scornful voice was heard from the smoke and dust in the sky. Accompanied by a strong wave of chakra, the unbridled dust in the surroundings immediately calmed down and fell to the ground again. The figure that came into sight was thin. The corner of his mouth was raised high, revealing an arrogant and ferocious smile. Chapter 346. In the dark night sky, Dustless stood alone. His eyes were as bright as stars, his upper body was torn into pieces, and his naked body was exposed to the erosion of raindrops. The six-path monk staff in his hand also disappeared. Within the same level, you are invincible. Wu Chen praised Ba Men Kai softly as his gaze fell on the body of Ba Men Kai, who was already close to the gates of hell. Ba Men Kai's strength was beyond his imagination. If Ba Men Kai was at the same level as him, perhaps he would have already been inhumanely wiped out. You broke the rules. Using the last of his strength to open his eyes, the burnt Ba Men Kai said with a hoarse voice. In his old voice, there was an indescribable joy. Dustless looked at Yakumen Kai with a blank expression and admitted frankly, "To be honest, your strength is really beyond my imagination. So much so that I had to use the ability of the glinting fruit to avoid that fatal attack." Yakumen Kai's power is powerful enough to distort time and space, and no one can be safe if hit by it. You forced me to use the elemental transformation to avoid the attack of Yakumen Kai. You should be proud. Even Uchiha Madara may not be able to do this. Madara's strength is beyond doubt. After becoming the Jinchuriki of the Jubi, his strength has reached an unprecedented level, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he can destroy the world with a snap of his fingers. Even so, Madara did not dare to say that he can suppress Dustless, let alone now, forcing Dustless to use the elemental transformation to avoid the attack. What's more, Guy has relied on his own efforts to get to where he is now. Compared with Madara, who uses the Jubi with external forces, Dustless is more willing to recognize Guy. Farewell. Black fire burned from Yakumen Kai's burnt skin, and the dark ghost fire swallowed him in an instant, and in less than a breath, he turned into ashes. After standing for a moment in the rain, Dustless left straight away. Ah. Dustless, Sama is really as strong as ever. About an hour later, the ground where Dustless had been standing before suddenly cracked open. The long Inyang person poked his head out from the ground and looked at the place where Dustless had disappeared. There was a hint of excitement in his tone. The stronger Dustless is, the higher the possibility of the Jubi being resurrected. Foolish. Do you think this man is dead set on walking the same path as us? Seeing that White Zetsu was so optimistic, Black Zetsu had to remind him in a hoarse voice. Uchiha Dustless and we have the same purpose, but our plans are completely different. He and Obito have the same idea. They are both here for the Jubi. At this point, Black Zetsu's voice fell silent. His meaning was self-evident. There was only one 10-tailed beast, and there were only 3 competitors. It was easy to imagine what would happen in the end. In the end, someone was destined to be eliminated. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. I didn't expect him to suddenly rise. Black Zetsu's heart was filled with emotions. He could only sigh at the twists and turns of fate. He had secretly studied Dustless's life several times, but he couldn't find out why he could suddenly rise like a comet. All in all, Obito will kill him after he becomes a Jinchuriki. With a sigh of relief, Black Zetsu no longer entangled with this problem. When the time comes, he doesn't need to say anything. Obito will eliminate Dustless by himself. Of course, if Obito isn't Dustless's opponent, Black doesn't mind helping Obito eliminate Dustless. Time flies, and a few days passed in the blink of an eye. It has been nearly half a month since the last battle between Dustless and Yakumen Kai. During this period, the whole world was in turmoil, and a large number of ninja forces were all swarming in the direction of the Rain Village. Obviously, the base of the Akatsuki was the Rain Village. As for why they suddenly knew the hiding place of Dustless and others, it was the most simple. Guy had been away for half a month, and there was no news about him. Maybe he had already fallen in the Rain Village's territory. What's more, almost all the countries in the world joined the Ninja Alliance, but the Rain Village was the only one who didn't care about it. Their suspicion was self-evident. As the commander of the Allied forces, Yondaime Reikich, the spies sent to the Rain Village were killed several times. Once or twice can barely be a coincidence, but if the number of times is increasing, it proves that there is something wrong with the Rain Village. It reflects that this village is the base of the Akatsuki. When the Kage of several major countries knew that the Akatsuki's base was in the Rain Village, they all felt embarrassed. The territory of the Rain Village is connected to the three major countries. If they had realized that something was wrong with the Rain Village, there wouldn't have been this chaos that affected the world. However, there is a saying that it's not too late to fill the brain. The ninja allied forces of the 5 major countries surrounded the Rain Village in groups from all directions. Tens of thousands of ninja allied forces almost filled the entire Rain Village. However, Obito wasn't a vegetarian. He sent a large number of white army to fight, blocking the enemy's footsteps at the edge of the Rain Village. For a time, the entire ninja world was filled with smoke. The Rain Village was safe for the time being. The ninjas of the 5 major countries have all been restrained by the White Zetsu army. Next, we just need to sneak attack their allied forces' headquarters and seize the Nibi to resurrect the Jubi. In a dark room, the masked man said with a gloomy and hoarse voice, and the 2 figures beside him were Dustless and Zetsu. The only difference is that the masked man, Obito, was obviously with Zetsu. Both of them intentionally or unintentionally isolated Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who was alone, the 2 were obviously together. This is also something that can't be helped. If Obito and Zetsu practice together, the Jubi will definitely fall on Dustless. Neither Obito nor Zetsu can bear it. In that case, immediately attack the base of the 5 Kage. After snatching Yujito, we will directly resurrect the Jubi. Dustless was too lazy to care about the relationship between Zetsu and Obito. Even if the 2 of them were together, it still won't change anything. Chapter 347. With the gathering of tailed beasts, Obito's ambition naturally swelled, especially with the addition of the new blood reincarnated from Kabuto's filthy earth. Obito threw away his last scruples, or it could be said that driven by revenge, he was also impatient, although on the surface he looked calm. In the shinobi world, smoke rose everywhere. A large number of white Zetsu and ninja allied forces were fighting. It was like purgatory on earth. The bloody stench of blood spilled all over the sky, soaking the earth, and the whole world was howling. Ninjas are predators standing at the top of the food chain, and their destructive power is huge. As Uchiha Madara said, ninjas are the source of evil and chakra is the root of their crimes. The world without chakra is completely peaceful and stable, and human beings can enter normal development. This lineup is strong enough. No wonder Obito can be so calm. On the top of the mountain, Dustless looked down at a large number of ninjas fighting below and couldn't help but nod. The Edo Tensei may not be as strong as the ninja allied forces, but there is a big gap in quality. How long are you going to be a spectator? An indifferent voice came from the side with a little bit of blame. Turning his head, he saw Uchiha Obito with a mask on his face. Dustless watched the battle for a long time, but he never made a move, and Obito's heart was full of resentment. Looking up, a large number of ninja allied forces were fighting below. These white Zetsu were obviously not their opponents, and they were almost crushed. Even some of the Edo Tensei ninjas couldn't resist and were sealed. He could clearly see the one-sided situation. The figure of the leader of the political department in front was clearly visible. A handsome boy with red hair, and a clear love character on his forehead. It was Gaara, the 5th Kazekage of the Kazekage village. Get rid of them all, I will catch Nibi. The masked man glanced at Dustless from the corner of his eye, and he flashed away. If he could, he said that if Dustless could kill him on the spot, he would definitely agree. No matter how Dustless reacted, Obito's body began to be swallowed by the vortex and slowly disappeared, as if he had never appeared. What are you trying to be cool for? I was the one who caused your little lover Rin Nohara's death. I'm looking forward to seeing your expression in the future. Curling his lips, after seeing Obito disappear, Dustless couldn't help but whisper. The command in this kid's tone made him extremely disgusted, but considering that his value would soon be squeezed dry, Dustless also felt relieved. There was no need to bother with a character who was about to be swept into the trash heap of history. But you people really should be cleaned up. Dustless stared at the crowd in the distance with a mocking smile on his face. Just as he was about to finish them off, the sand layer under his feet began to tremble. Dust filled the sky, and yellow smoke swept across. The sandstorm that was hundreds of feet high covered the sky and the earth, dyeing the endless void with its own color. It was daunting, as if it was guided by the god of the desert, and it surrounded them from all directions. There was no doubt that only Gaara could use sand on such a large scale. The formation is not bad, it's strong enough, but, with a look of contempt on his face, Dustless sneered, and chakra began to go berserk, like a bottomless black hole. The terrifying fluctuations that erupted directly shook the ground slightly. Dustless sneered. You're really fragile, you want to touch me with such a low-level technique? Vulgar and ridiculous. The golden evil brilliance spread out, and the high density and rich chakra was compressed into a shape. The thick skeleton was clearly visible, and it was inlaid and assembled layer by layer. In just a few breaths, the tall golden giant was exposed to the air, holding a golden tachi, looking around with its copper-like eyes, and immediately sweeping out the long sword. Boom boom boom. Susanoo was just an ordinary mature form, but its power was still enough to destroy the heaven and earth. A casual blow from it was accompanied by a mess. The powerful sandstorm collapsed in an instant, and the sky was clear again. Gulp. Many ninja coalition forces looked at the chakra giant in horror, and they choked unnaturally. Their faces were full of horror, and the rapid oppressive ferocious eyes could pierce people's souls. Their hearts were filled with fear involuntarily, and they began to retreat involuntarily. Don't be afraid, he's just alone, and we have a lot of people, and each of us can drown him with a spit. We have nowhere to retreat, and the whole world is behind us. Seeing everyone flinch for a while, Gaara raised his arm and shouted. His voice seemed to be full of magic, and the frightened ninja coalition forces stopped, defeated the fear in their hearts, and resolutely looked at the indifferent Dustless. Everyone's eyes were filled with beast-like madness. Just as Gaara had said, the whole world was behind them. If they cowered, they would be doomed eternally. There was no turning back. There was nowhere to hide. There was nowhere to run. Reckless brat. The means of bewitching people are good. His cold eyes faintly looked at the ninjas below, and Dustless's Susanoo enlarged again. The bright light was more rich and clear, like flowing gold, shining with a burning brilliance. There is a road to heaven, but you don't take it, and there is no door to hell, but you throw yourself into it. In that case, I will send you to heaven together. With a horrifying frost hanging on his face, Dustless's whole person was gloomy, and Susanoo's katana of light was also raised high. Just as he was about to strike them, a very fast black shadow suddenly entered his sight. The speed was extremely fast, and it was not inferior to Dustless's speed. The overbearing and invincible aura of the whole body was even more daring to compete with the world. At least 4 or 5 chapters a day. Naruto will end soon. Everyone quickly vote for the next world. If there is no actual book review, leave a message for me. Chapter 348. The thin red figure landed beside Wuxia. His messy hair danced in the wind. His indifferent eyes looked disdainfully at the sky. His hands were casually folded in front of him. The awe-inspiring gaze from his pupils was domineering and peerless. He despised all living things and faintly revealed the momentum to compete with the vast sky. In the whole world, there is only one person who is so overbearing. Uchiha Madara. Seeing this, Dustless also removed the kinsusanoo that covered his body and looked at Madara from the corner of his eyes. His brows slightly wrinkled, and then he relaxed as if nothing happened. Madara in red armor also fell beside Dustless. It seems that there is a deviation from the plan, Dustless. Uchiha Madara's face had clear cracks, his pupils were gloomy black, and his whole body was lifeless. He was not so much a living person who could walk on his own, but a walking corpse possessed by a ghost, without any vitality. Turning his head, Madara's eyes flashed with a cold light. Plan. If everything is as you expect, what is the point of me and Obito's existence? Glancing at Madara calmly, Dustless said calmly. Others may be afraid of Uchiha Madara, but Dustless is not afraid. Even with the existence of the Edo Tensei, a perfect body, Dustless is not afraid. In any case, Uchiha Madara is a dead man, and Dustless does not need to obey him, let alone fear him. Yes. Hearing this, Madara just nodded. Indeed, as Dustless said, if things go as smoothly as he thought, Dustless and Obito really don't need to exist, and maybe the whole world has fallen into the ultimate genjutsu of infinite Tsukuyomi. Damn Kabuto, it was a mistake not to mention killing you. Dustless's eyes were full of murderous intent. He didn't mean to resurrect Uchiha Madara, and he even wanted to kick him away. After all, this guy is very shrewd, and his strength is unreliable. Especially at this critical moment. Dustless is extremely disgusted with Madara, who may change the situation at will. Find a chance to kill this guy. Not only Dustless has such an idea, but Madara also has the same idea. Although his face is as usual, he also labeled Dustless as a dead man. It is never wrong to remove the uncertain factors in advance. At present, only Nibi is left. The resurrection of the Geto Mazo requires the 9-tailed beast's chakra, and now the Jinchuriki of Nibi has not been obtained, and the resurrection of Jubi has been delayed. Are they here? Raising his eyes leisurely, Wu Chen's sight passed through the layers of space, and 5 strong and magnanimous figures came into his sight. It was like a shot in the arm, and the agitated heart of the joint ninja force calmed down. He stared at Dustless and Madara, and his killing intent was even stronger. Yo! Madara's eyes were full of surprise and he said, "It's incredible from their dress, it's obvious that they don't belong to the same country. These ninjas from all over the world will one day work together to deal with the same person. It's really ruthless." It's no wonder that Madara will have such feelings. After all, he lived in the chaotic period of the Warring States period. Not to mention working together, even brothers would kill each other from time to time. With the change of time, people's inner character will naturally change with it. The current period is not the dark age you lived in, Dustless said, and at the same time, he looked straight at Madara and said bluntly, "You just want to see how strong they are. Such a ridiculous excuse, Madara. You're just like a kid who hasn't grown up yet. I just want to see how strong the current Kage is." Hearing this, Madara just smiled indifferently. Frankly, he was really curious about the current strength of the 5 Kage. Dustless, the impatient one, is the kid. What's more, the problem with Obito seems to have not been solved for the time being, and now it's just a golden opportunity. Madara's eyes were filled with awe-inspiring brilliance, and his aura of invincibility made Dustless deeply moved, and he secretly sighed that Madara was worthy of being a peerless hero. Even if several Obito superimposed together, They may not be as strong as Madara. Play as you wish, but don't underestimate the 5 Kage, lest you fall. Dustless simply sat on the ground, and he was too lazy to pay attention to Madara. This guy was a typical battle maniac. He just looked at the several figures in front of him indifferently. He actually wanted to see how strong Madara was when he fought with all his strength. You fell and bruised your head? If it's possible, I hope so too. As his words fell, Madara's mouth was filled with an insolent and ferocious smile. His whole body roared like a cannonball, and with an invincible momentum, he rushed into the ninja allied forces. Boom, boom, boom. The blazing heat burst out, and looking up, Madara saw a wave of fire with a diameter of more than 10 meters. It was overwhelming, and it was like a wave pressing down on the ninja allied forces. Worthy of the name of Senju Hashirama, ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu have all reached the limit. Wuxia, who was on the mountaintop, nodded slightly. His eyes lit up as he praised from the bottom of his heart. Uchiha Madara was perfect, almost impeccable in all aspects. Maybe it's because he's too perfect, so in my eyes he's full of flaws. Dustless's pale lips raised a bloodthirsty smile, and he secretly sneered. Perfection itself is a kind of imperfection. He thought that he could observe Madara's power, but suddenly, several chakra fluctuations came from behind him. He suddenly turned back, and several old scenes of the past were reflected in his cheeks. Chapter 349. Staring at the familiar faces, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of trance. His thoughts turned back, thinking of the time in the past, and sighed leisurely. Long time no see, everyone. Dustless's voice was like a breeze, coupled with his slightly soft smile. It gave people a feeling of spring, especially warm. Several figures reflected in Dustless's eyes were clearly visible. All of them were the Edo Tensei army. All of them were wearing crimson robes. All of them were like the previous Uchiha Madara. All of them were lifeless, like dead people coming out of a coffin. Dustless Uchiha Madara, don't pretend to be a ghost. Today I will kill you. A low hiss filled with endless killing intent rang out. Looking up, it was the red-haired youth whose rage level was off the charts. His handsome face was as ferocious as an evil spirit, and the surging hostility caused the surrounding temperature to drop to the freezing point. Just kill you. Why do you hate me so much, Sasori? Wuxia shrugged and said helplessly. He lowered his eyes, which were overflowing with cold light. He said indifferently, "You're so restless. I'm afraid that you'll die again before you can see the sunlight and the air." Looking around, he could clearly see Itachi, Deidara, Kakuzu, and Haiden, as well as Sasori. What's the use of shrimp soldiers and crab generals? There is also Kabuto, an idiot seeking his own death. Dustless secretly sneered, his eyes suddenly fixed on Itachi's body, and an indescribable color flashed in his eyes. These people were all ordered by Kabuto to clean up Dustless. Just kill me. Hearing this, even with Sasori's temperament, he was burning with anger. What do you mean just kill me? Humans only have one life. He couldn't hold back his anger, and began to erupt rapidly. His young fists were clenched tightly. He fiercely stared at Dustless, and said in a cold voice, "The blood debt of the past will be paid with your life." His 5 fingers were tightly stretched, 5 crystal-clear blue lines were clearly visible, as hard as steel, cutting iron like mud, and could cut the human body into pieces. "Get out of my way." When he was about to cut Dustless into pieces, a thin black figure suddenly blocked in front of him, and there was a clear 8 mark on his face. There was no doubt that it was Itachi. Seeing this, Sasori was stunned, and then he warned, "Don't think that the Uchiha clan's Sharingan is invincible. My art is above your eyes." His gloomy and cold tone was even worse than the bone-chilling cold wind. It was no wonder that Scorpio hated Dustless so. He had nothing to say about dying under the enemy's hands. That was because his own skill was not as good as the enemy's. But to die under the hands of Dustless, one of his own people, he really felt ashamed and sullen. "You are not his opponent." Waving his hand to stop Sasori, who was planning to attack alone, Itachi stared at Dustless, who was standing indifferently, and calmly analyzed. He always believed that there is no invincible ninjutsu in the world, including the Edo Tensei that controlled him, and it can also be full of loopholes. So what? Hearing this, Sasori's aura became even more awe-inspiring as he said, "That guy Kabuto gave us the order to get rid of Uchiha Wuxia. Unlimited chakra, a body that won't stop until you die, and dash. And what? A body that will never recover?" A ghostly sneer suddenly came, interrupting Sasori's cold face, and then he saw a pitch-black shadow almost instantly appear behind Sasori. Amaterasu. Itachi was the first to react, and his pupils turned into scarlet-red Mangekyo Sharingan, and his sight was focused on Dustless's body. Boom! Dustless's thin body suddenly emitted black flames, and his whole body was swallowed by the flames, and it was too horrible to look at. Even the outline of his body couldn't be seen clearly, and it was beyond recognition. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Sasori quickly pulled away from Dustless. This guy is too dangerous. He should be dead. Deidara's eyes widened as he stared at Dustless, who was swallowed by the Amaterasu, and his tone was a little surprised. So far he hasn't seen anyone who was swallowed by the Amaterasu and was safe and sound. How is it possible? He was actually swallowed. After a while, along with an incredulous voice, Deidara looked up and saw that the black flames burning on Dustless's body were gradually fading away. It was like a super black hole in the depths of the universe, and in an instant, everything was gone. Phew! A sharp sound of breaking the air rang out, and the calm air swept up a strong airwave. Wu Chun, who was reflected in the eyes, disappeared without a trace. His breath trace blended into the void. When he flashed once more, he appeared beside Sasori of the red sand. So fast. The pitch-black shadow covered the sun, and Scorpion felt a chill in his heart. Just as he was about to retreat again, he suddenly felt his body become light. His whole body was free of gravity, and he was floating in the air. Looking down, he saw Dustless with a strange smile on his face, holding Sasori's neck with one hand and letting him float in the air. "You people are really sad. It's enough to be killed once. Now you are resurrected, and you are going to be killed again." Hearing this, the members of Edo Tensei looked at each other, and they could see the disdain in each other's eyes. When everyone was about to snort, they were shocked to find that Dustless's arm was emitting some kind of strange energy fluctuation. Sasori's body was slowly collapsing. In just a blink of an eye, Sasori, who had threatened to retaliate before, was completely annihilated. Even the powerful body of Edo Tensei couldn't be repaired, and directly disappeared. Chapter 350. Yin-Yang Release is the nemesis of all ninjutsu in the world. It is the natural enemy of all ninjutsu in the world. Even the Edo Tensei with infinite chakra is no exception. When they come into contact with Yin-Yang Release, they will turn into ashes. Gulp. It had to be said that the members of Akatsuki organization had witnessed countless bizarre techniques, and had trained a formidable immunity, but facing such a strange situation, they still couldn't help but choke with sobs, and absent-mindedly. Their face was filled with disbelief. Sasori was killed by him just like that. Deidara choked, and said with a trembling voice, "Such a strange situation. He has seen it for the first time in his life." Looking at Dustless, a touch of fear flashed in his eyes, and he subconsciously took a step back. It wasn't until Sasori resurrected that he knew how crazy and terrifying this man was. Even if he was a teammate, killing him was just a matter of a thought from Dustless. As long as Dustless judged that he was no longer useful. Even if he was a god, he would also lie under his blade in fear. "Even if I die again, I will drag you down with me." The hesitation in his eyes was quickly replaced by cold killing intent. Deidara's face was crazy. He didn't have a good impression of the Uchiha family. The first time he fell in the hands of Dustless, the second time was in the hands of Itachi, and then he died in the hands of Sasuke. It can be said that he and the Uchiha family have an irreconcilable hatred. Pucci. Without thinking, he directly used his strongest move. He tore his crimson robe, revealing a big mouth on his chest, and immediately fed a lot of explosive clay. This guy is going to use that jutsu as soon as he came up? The faces of the Akatsuki members who were hit by Edo Tensei changed dramatically. As Deidara's former teammates, they naturally knew some of Deidara's jutsu, and Deidara died because of this jutsu. However, when he remembered that everyone had an immortal body, he quickly felt relieved. He looked at Wuxia calmly and leisurely. Art is explosion. My ultimate art is self-destruction. Go to hell. Staring at the crazy detail, Dustless was calm and composed. The so-called art was of no use to him. From the beginning of this boring duel, he was in an invincible position. Boom, boom, boom. After a burst of dazzling light, an explosion that covered an area of dozens of kilometers resounded through the clouds. Waves of destruction swept out like a hurricane, like the embodiment of the law of destruction. Everything that came into contact with the white light and the air waves produced by the explosion was instantly annihilated. On the ground, a huge crater was clearly visible, as if it had been hit by a meteorite. It was a complete mess. In the sky, the lazy white clouds that had been surging before were also shattered. There was not even a trace of their existence left behind. Everything had returned to its original state. If it weren't for Uchiha Sasuke using Manda to avoid Deidara's self-destruction, he would definitely be in the same situation as the current scene. Even the members of the Akatsuki organization, who were reincarnated by the Edo Tensei, were also crushed. However, since they had reincarnated by the Edo Tensei, they recovered in the blink of an eye. Was he killed? Deidara, who should have died, also recovered. Seeing that Dustless had disappeared, the corners of his mouth raised into a smile, and his unscrupulous laughter resounded through the clouds. Sorry to disappoint you. After a while, the sarcastic voice that shouldn't have appeared made Deidara's expression immediately collapse, and his face was gloomy. Deidara, you should know that I am immune to physical attacks. For physical attack type ninjas like you, I am your natural enemy. The dazzling light gathered all over the sky and condensed into Dustless's body. He was unscathed, and there was a smile on his face. Don't be too complacent, Uchiha Dustless. Flying Duan, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, immediately flashed behind Dustless. The big scythe in his hand went through Dustless's body and directly cut him in half. You are the one who is too complacent. The dazzling golden light gathered on the right side of Flying Duan. Dustless' body began to condense and materialize. At the same time, he leaped up. His ordinary feet were filled with indescribable danger. Flying Duan instinctively retreated and hurriedly pulled back its scarlet scythe, wanting to use it to block Dustless' attack. However, the strange scene made everyone's jaws drop. How is this possible? Dustless's ordinary leg, without any strength, touched the sharp scythe. The latter directly collapsed, and in just a moment, it was completely corroded. Poochie. This scene happened too fast, and in a flash Haiden didn't have time to react, and the leg that swept over his head directly separated his head from his body. His body, like Sasori before, began to slowly peel off and collapse. The name of this jutsu is Inyang Release, the strongest jutsu that can be launched after gathering the power of the Uchiha and Senju clans. Of course, through some other channels, Inyang Release can also be used, and its ability is naturally, as you have seen, it can make most of the ninjutsu in the world invalid. Any matter that comes in contact with it will collapse. Looking at Itachi, Deidara, and the last three people, Dustless explained directly. How dare you be so arrogant? Clenching his iron fist, Deidara shouted unhappily. Dustless bluntly told them the ability of Inyang Release, which was a direct slap in their face, and contempt for them. Akatsuki is full of S-class rebellious ninjas, and Deidara has always thought that everyone is the same kind of people, and there is no difference in status and strength. Dustless looked at them as if they were ants, and Deidara's heart has long been filled with anger. Actually, killing you is just a matter of a moment. It will end here. Chapter 351. As Dustless's voice fell, Deidara and Kakuzu's expression changed. Their eyes were filled with anger. Dustless's words meant that killing them in seconds was just a matter of seconds. Are you surprised and sad? Dustless smiled at the indignant Deidara and Kakuzu, and the corner of his mouth curled into a mocking arc, and he said, "Don't show such an unhappy face. It sounds like a fantasy, but the actual situation is like this." Poochie. Suddenly, without even a scream, Deidara's chest was directly penetrated by Dustless. The black iron rod penetrated his whole body, and his body slowly collapsed. What a joke! Looking at the black iron rod in his abdomen, Deidara roared unwillingly, and his eyes were filled with madness like a dying beast. When he exhausted all his strength and was about to use self-explosion again, the black iron rod suddenly sent out a more ferocious force and directly annihilated him. From the beginning to the end of the world, it was only a few seconds. This was the strength of Dustless. In such a short time, he could easily kill a Kage-level powerhouse after Edo Tensei. The next one is you. He appeared strangely like a ghost and disappeared strangely like a ghost. He came and went without a trace. She realized that when Wuxia appeared, he might have already been separated by the heavens and the earth forever. Just like Deidara before, Kakuzu also faced such a scene. How is it possible? The hair on his body stood up, and Kakuzu's pupils widened. He looked at Dustless in front of him in disbelief. This speed that was beyond common sense was completely incomprehensible, and he couldn't defend against it. He could only passively take a beating. Without the slightest hesitation, silver lightning swept over his body and crackled continuously, forming a thick silver coat around himself, hoping to defend against Dustless's attack. Boring, this kind of ordinary ninjutsu can't stop me. Shaking his head, the black iron rod in his hand came out. With a poochie sound, it directly penetrated Kakuzu's body after Edo Tensei, leaving an obvious big hole in his abdomen. The ugly black hole was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, and with this as the center, it swallowed Kakuzu's body. In this case, only you are left, Itachi. Withdrawing leisurely, he turned a deaf ear to Kaku. Dustless looked at Itachi with interest and asked, "You can be so calm in front of me. What tricks do you have up your sleeve? I'm really looking forward to it. But let me give you a piece of advice. If it's an ordinary physical attack, such as a boring and powerless technique like Susanoo, it's best for you to stop now." Dustless could elementalize at will, which also meant that he could ignore more than 99% of physical attacks in the world. Dustless also once said this to Itachi. "Of course, I know your ability." Hearing this, Dustless with Duan's words said. S. This is interesting. With a flash of surprise in his eyes, Dustless also began to look at his younger brother seriously. Suddenly, he remembered that Itachi's Mangekyos disappeared. When he was about to ask if he gave it to Sasuke, an indescribable ancient aura suddenly appeared. Even Dustless and Uchiha Madara, who was teasing the 5 Kages, were stunned and looked at the void in the distance. The strong energy fluctuation almost crushed the whole world, and an unprecedented throbbing could be felt from dozens of kilometers away. This violent chakra. It can't be wrong. In his mind, he suddenly recalled the top creature that could destroy heaven and earth. Wu Chen's eyes could not help but be filled with greed and fanaticism. His greed was even more obvious. Daydreaming is not over yet. No matter what your purpose is, you will embark on an alternative path of redemption. Itachi's dark eyes were full of determination, and his voice was heavy, with a faint sense of relief. As long as he uses that technique, everything will be over. Just by you? After so many years, you are still as naive as ever, Itachi. Dustless, who returned to his senses, sneered and said without exaggeration. Even if Itachi's strength in this state soared 10 times, Dustless wouldn't think that he did it himself. When he was about to open his mouth mode to attack this kid, Itachi's voice came in advance. "I don't think you can understand this jutsu. I was going to use it on Sasuke. But now it's your turn." His pupils focused on Dustless's eyes. Itachi's Sharingan quickly turned, and the strange luster pulsed with mysterious fluctuations, and his eyes suddenly began to rage. Staring at Dustless's eyes, he suddenly shouted, "Izanami." Soon after Itachi's voice fell, Dustless's shining pupils lost their color, like a gem covered with sand, and the original brilliance disappeared in an instant. Dustless's eyes were empty and gray, as if his soul was taken away and he lost the direction of life. The cause and effect of all this is finally over. Seeing Dustless like this, Itachi breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time, the eyes that had just activated Izanami closed, and permanently lost their light. Izanami is one of the ultimate genjutsu of the Uchiha family, and it is one of the ultimate genjutsu of the Uchiha family. Once it is used, it will fall into an infinite cycle. This ninjutsu cannot be broken. Only when the victim admits the purpose of the caster, Izanami will be automatically lifted, so the mind of the victim will change. So it can be called an invincible existence, and if you want to break it, you have to know yourself again. Pucci. Just when Itachi thought it was all over, a black iron rod flew toward him and directly penetrated his body, and his body began to collapse. Looking up, the initiator was Dustless with a smile on his face. Chapter 352. His pupils dilated. Staring at the black iron stick that penetrated his chest, he subconsciously reached out to touch it, but unexpectedly when he touched it, his entire arm began to fester and disintegrate. How is it possible? Izanami should be unsolvable. Forcibly suppressing his inner uneasiness, Itachi asked in a low voice, and his tone was full of disbelief and confusion. He was sure that Dustless was affected by Izanami's jutsu. However, as if nothing had happened, he used Yin-Yang release to make him collapse and dissipate. Unsolvable. Hearing this, Dustless just glanced at Itachi and said softly, "Any jutsu in the world has its unknown weaknesses. Isn't this what you said before? Unsolvable jutsu is called unsolvable, but it doesn't mean it's invincible." Itachi's mouth moved slightly, and his eyes flashed with a touch of emotion. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't refute it. All jutsu have unknown weaknesses, but so far Izanami has been unsolvable. This is the ultimate forbidden jutsu of the Uchiha clan, and no one is immune to it. Sharingan is known as the eye of the soul. When you open Mangekyo, different jutsu will be born in each person's eyes. Of course, there are some incredible things that happen. For example, all three of us have a jutsu called Amaterasu in our eyes. Dustless said, although his tone was friendly, he was very sure. From this, it was not difficult to see that the jutsu born from Mangekyo Sharingan also had a subtle relationship with bloodline inheritance. Dustless still remembered that Uchiha Sasuke also had Amaterasu in his eyes. When he caught Hachibi Killer Bee, he didn't integrate Itachi's eyes, but he could use Amaterasu, which explained everything. Including Uchiha Madara, can also use Amaterasu. Could it be that you have a jutsu born in your eyes that can resist Izanami? Itachi himself was a smart person, and after Dustless's slight reminder, his pupils were like waking up from a dream, and a touch of understanding flashed in his eyes. Genjutsu such as Kodo Amatsukami and Izanami are invincible and perfect, but the jutsu born in Dustless's eyes seems to be deliberately resisting these jutsu. Staring at Wuchan's left and right eyes, Itachi had thousands of words in his heart. He knew Wuchan's life. Compared with him and Sasuke, Wuchan's childhood was extremely miserable. He suffered from turbulence and saw the world's coldness and warmth. Perhaps it was such a cruel life that caused his life to change, his temperament to change, and his pursuit of life to change. So when he opened Mangekyo, he was born to resist this incredible jutsu. When I activated the kaleidoscope, my right eye gave birth to the omniscient and omnipotent technique. It can ignore and be immune to any illusions in the world that I know. Whether it's the so-called Kodo Amatsukami or Izanami, they can't affect me. Dustless is immune to the so-called infinite Tsukuyami. Even if there are thousands of methods, he can deal with them one by one. As the name says, omniscient and omnipotent, he knows everything. Knowing that I'm immune to physical attacks, you can use genjutsu to fight against me, much stronger than them. Dustless said indifferently. Unfortunately, not only physical attacks don't work on me, but genjutsu also don't work on me. From the time I opened Mangekyo Sharingan, no one in this world can cause fatal damage to me. Dustless's voice fell. Itachi's Edo Tensei body has disappeared. You're next. Looking at the distant sky, Dustless's eyes were cold, and at the same time, he looked at Madara, who was teasing the 5 Kages, and the cold light in his eyes was deeper and more substantial. Luster rose from his entire body, enveloping the void like the sun. Wuxia hid in the void and disappeared without a trace. From now on, it also means that the cooperation between Dustless and Uchiha Madara is terminated. Whether it is Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara, or Black Zetsu, from now on, they are all enemies of Dustless. Ambitious brat. Turning his head and staring at the disappearing rainbow light behind him, Madara sneered. At the same time, chakra rose again, and Kansusanu's body became bigger. Azure brilliance shrouded the sky, and the ferocious and terrifying Tengu armor was draped over the mature Susanu's head, and a simple and heavy armor appeared all over its body. It had 2 heads and 4 arms, and the 2 long swords at its waist were clearly visible. It's Uchiha Madara's complete body, Kansusanu. For the 5 Kages, the blue light originally belonged to the light of hope, but at this moment, their hearts were desperate. The 100-meter-high giant was a godlike existence for them. The difference between the 2 sides is too big. Even if Uchiha Madara doesn't use the Rinnegan ability, he can just rely on Kansusanu's complete body to sweep them. Madara-sama. The hoarse and gloomy voice suddenly sounded in their minds, and Madara's invincible attack suddenly stopped, and the sharp sword in Kansusanu's hand also stopped. Black Zetsu. Samsara's eyes were gloomy, and Madara's tone was a little heavy. There was only one Jubi, but there were 3 competitors, and the ninja allied forces were eyeing it. Uchiha Dustless has already passed, and the target should be the 9-tailed beasts? In their minds, Black Zetsu's voice sounded again, with a hint of worry. He doesn't think that Obito is the opponent of Dustless, the beast of the deep sea. Dustless with his giant teeth can easily tear Obito apart. 9-tailed beasts. Shouldn't the Jubi be resurrected? The previous energy fluctuation shouldn't be from the 9-tailed beasts. Frowning slightly, Kansusanu's complete body, Madara's face was full of doubts. The energy fluctuation that spread out just now was obviously not from a tailed beast. This is Uchiha Madara, the tailed beast that the world is afraid of. In his eyes, it's just a small pet that can be pinched at will. Even the Jubi, he doesn't care about it. It's just an existence that he can play with at will. Chapter 353. The energy fluctuation that spread out before was obviously not from the bijou. Madara asked himself that no one knew the bijou better than him. When he controlled the Kyuubi to challenge Hashirama, he had a unique understanding of the strength of the bijou. The strength of the pets is just SOSO, and the energy fluctuation just now is obviously stronger than the Kyuubi. The violent chakra fluctuation before. Even Madara felt a palpitation. The strongest bijou is the Kyuubi, but he has fought side by side with the Kyuubi, and he naturally knows the Kyuubi. The energy fluctuation is obviously not from the Kyuubi, and it can even be said that it is completely different. Although the Kyuubi is strong, it is not enough to shake the world. The Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito has already fallen into the hands of Obito. The Bijudama just now gathered the Yin chakra of the Kyuubi, as well as the other 8 Bijudama. It should also contain the charm of the Jubi. Black Zetsu said in a deep voice. After all, the Bijudama condensed by the power of the 9 Bijudama is equivalent to the Judama of the Jubi to some extent. So that's how it is. Hearing this, Madara's eyes flashed, and he remembered that Dustless's goal was the Jubi, and his mouth suddenly swept with a gloomy smile. It's impossible for Obito to give the Bijudama and the Jubi to Dustless. When the time comes, it will be inevitable for them to fight. Naturally, there will be casualties. Dustless and Obito will fight to the end, but whether Obito dies or not, it will be good news for Madara. You go and watch Obito and Dustless to prevent them from making any uncontrollable situation. I will play with these 5 Kage for a while. Although it's a pity that he can't see the scene of Dustless and Obito killing each other, it's good to play with these so-called Kage. At least it won't be boring. Hearing this, Black Zetsu didn't dare to say more, and he withdrew from Madara's mind. After all, The real boss now was Madara, and Black Zetsu was just a will created by Madara. Staring at the dense ninja coalition below, the Kinsusanoo gathered on his body shrunk strangely, and he still had 2 heads and 4 arms. What was unusual was that the 2 Kinsusanoo and Uchiha Madara were also making strange hand seals, giving people a feeling of danger. Consider this a thank you gift for entertaining me 5 Kages. As Madara's voice fell, his chakra suddenly surged, and the vast and majestic chakra stirred the world. The dark clouds above the void collapsed as if something from outer space blocked the sky. The earth was dark and gloomy, full of some kind of indescribable despair. Tengai quaking star. After Madara's roar, the clouds instantly burst. Looking up, a giant meteorite with a size of 15 kilometers fell from the sky, almost crushing the entire sky. The huge meteorite filled the void and slowly fell under the incredulous gaze of all the ninja coalition forces. Gulp. Without exception, the ninja coalition forces all widened their eyes, and their faces were full of horror. They unconsciously choked, and some even directly retreated, looking at the huge meteorite in the sky in fear. The visual impact caused by the falling meteorite was unparalleled. Looking at Madara standing indifferently, all the ninja coalition forces classified him as a god. Summoning such a terrible meteorite, only a god can do it. It was also inevitable that Madara was labeled as a god in everyone's heart. Many people simply turned around and ran away. Stupid, the Tengai earthquake star covers the ground for several kilometers. With your level, it's useless no matter how you escape. Seeing this, Madara's eyes flashed with ridicule, and then he stood leisurely in Kinsusanoo's hand, looking down at the ninjas below. His cold voice resounded between heaven and earth. Uchiha Madara is a peerless ninja with the same name as Hashirama Senju. When people talk about Uchiha Madara, they will talk about Hashirama Senju. Similarly, when people talk about Hashirama, they will think of Uchiha Madara. You people are not worthy of being compared to me, including you Kage. Ordinary people are not worthy to fight with me. Madara's face was filled with arrogance, and his majestic voice was accompanied by chakra waves, resounding in every corner between heaven and earth. Although extremely arrogant, no one dared to refute, including Inoki, Tsunade, Reikage, and Mei. These so-called Kage were full of shame. In front of Madara, they were not worth mentioning, they were extremely fragile. This was an undeniable fact. Despair. Flee. Scatter and flee like ants. After saying that, Madara closed his eyes and held his hands in front of him. His long black hair fluttered in the wind, and the falling Mangetsu also locked him inside. However, compared to the ninja coalition, Madara was fearless. Boom! Suddenly, a monstrous explosion was heard in the void. The ear-piercing rumbling sound was like thunder. It seemed as if something had shattered. Raising his head, he saw countless meteorite fragments falling down from the sky. What? Uchiha Madara was slightly startled, and his eyes flashed with a little surprise. He looked at the void, and then looked down at the debris under his feet and around him, frowning slightly. He looked up and looked directly at the void hidden in the clouds, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. In a trance, he vaguely saw a golden beam of light shuttling through 2 meteorites. This should be impossible, right? Madara's calm expression suddenly stiffened, and his face was full of gloominess, and his expression was a little unbelievable, even if he hid it well. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.